let's see. Are we live? I think so. I think we're good. Hopefully. Hopefully this is working.
What I'm seeing. Okay, yeah, you're live.
We're good. Okay, cool. Oh, I think they picked up your voice too, Monty. You're a star now. All right, let's see. I think we're good. We have everything. Let me move this down a little bit, the chat. There we go. That's probably better. Okay, let me know if you can hear me. Once we start bringing people in, I'll ask you guys to make sure that you can hear them. I think that shouldn't be a problem. I don't think, at least. Hopefully not. Okay, cool. And then I'll start. Let's see. Just so everyone knows, I'm kind of quiet. Really? I feel like this should be pretty good. Are you sure it's on your computer, Kakami? Because I feel like my volume's pretty up there. Or it's like at least higher than I can hear. Okay, good. Just want to make sure. What's up, Steven? This is in the chat. We have Mr. Steven Lin, the gentleman who made me look awesome in front of my mother, sister, and girlfriend at breakfast here in Chicago last week. Thank you very much, Steven. Also, Steven, thank you, though, because now my mother and sister know I have a YouTube channel. And my mom texted me even like, are you doing a Q&A tonight? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, shit. Like, oh, God. Especially, like, given, what we're talking about. I'm like, oh, no. Careful about answering any, too personal questions. Okay. So I think we have... so my mic's good. Again, once someone comes into the chat, we'll make sure their volume's good. But okay, we have a couple people coming in. However, we did have a couple more, but they couldn't make it. So we'll probably those people I'll probably let go for a little bit longer. And then if other people want to hop in, you can either ask questions in the chat when that time comes, or if you guys really want to, if you're in the Discord, just let me know, and I'll let you in there, and then we can just go from there. Because you might have a question or a follow-up question from it. Yeah, I don't know, Jed. It's a pretty crazy channel in terms of so what's your channel about? It's kind of all over the place. So okay. So anyways, this is the male dating and sex struggles Q&A. So after the video came out, Sir Grand Inquisitor, one of my current mods in my Discord, had the idea of hey, did you think about doing a Q&A about the video? And I was like, oh, I didn't actually think of that. That's actually a really good idea. And then when the video first came out, it wasn't really blowing up as much as I was hoping it would. I mean, obviously, I always hope it will. But then it started to pick up a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, this actually looks good. And I got plenty of comments, and most of them were really positive. Surprisingly, they were very positive. I was before the video came out, I was horrified because I knew it was a very contentious topic. I knew it was very something that was people felt very strongly about. There were a lot of hot takes about it. Yeah, and I was really afraid that oh, is this going to help people, or is it going to make things worse? Is it going to solidify people's prejudices? I don't know. But I was very thankful to that it turned out very well, and a lot of people saw it, and some of you gave me incredibly touching comments that I couldn't be more thankful for. Very personal stories. Very many people said that it really spoke to them and touched them, and that's really what gave them new insight, and that was really what I was gunning for. I don't know if it's a video that's a video that's going to change any minds, people who were if they're in the rabbit hole, if they're down that road, if they're in red pill. I don't know if it's something that I don't know if it's something that would be enough to help them, or to kind of make them oh, maybe try something else. I don't know. Hopefully. But I don't know. I wish it would, but maybe I don't know if maybe it was a little bit too one-sided. I don't know. Oh, thank you for the donation, JM. So basically, what this is gonna do is, so usually the Q&As, what we've done in the past is I'll just ask questions in the chat, and then I'll answer them. You know, just like here. The only problem we were thinking of before was that it kind of is limiting in a way, just because you ask a question, and then I kind of go on a rant about it, and then there isn't a lot of back and forth or follow up. So yeah, this was so we were figuring, hey, why don't we do like a call-in Q&A and see how that goes? Hopefully it goes well. But basically, we're gonna have a couple people come on and just chat about whatever they like to chat about. Whether I was kind of hoping for people who maybe had more contentions with the video, or if they had like disagreements or needed things cleared up. However, or if anyone wants to, and again, later on after we're kind of after the scheduled people have come on, then we can open it up to people who just want to comment or like share their experiences if you'd like. You don't have to be on camera or anything. It'll just be your Discord name. So if you'd like to, you can always just shoot a message to in the Discord. Either just DM me in Discord and just let me know, like, hey, I'd like to hop on, and then I'll bring you on a little bit later. So yeah, but yeah, I figured this would be a good way to kind of get some back and forth, because usually we don't. Usually the Q&As are just, you ask a question, I rant about it for like a while, and then there's no like back and forth or clarification. So this was sort of like what that was for. But yeah, so yeah, hopefully this goes well. I didn't really, me being the king of planning, me, of course, here I am like scrambling an hour before trying to get everything good to go. But awesome. All right, cool. Okay, so our first guest, we have Daniel Scott. I'm going to pull him in. Daniel, if you're watching right now, I'm going to try to do this. Let's see how well this goes. If you couldn't tell, I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, there you are. Daniel, I'm going to send you the invite, and then hopefully you should be able to join. It's a private channel that I set up just so like a bunch of people don't jump in. So I just sent it to you, Daniel, so it should be in your Discord, I think. And then you should be able to join the channel, hopefully. Knowing me, I probably fucked something up. So let's see. Okay, it says he's joining. Hopefully it works. Like, knowing me, I probably fucked up the permissions or something. Let's see. Let's see. He's typing. Did you get the invite? Oh no, I probably fucked it up. Let's see. Oh, what? Oh crap, I probably fucked something up. Let's see. I will. Oh, I don't want Macabre storytelling, damn it. Oh, okay. I can't invite people just to the channel? What? Let's see. Why isn't this working? If you guys can't tell how good I am at, like... Yeah, you know what, Daniel, that's probably what we're going to have to do. Let me just give you... I'll just direct call you. If you can't tell that I know exactly what I'm doing at all times. Here, let me try it out. Hopefully this works. Daniel?
Hello, hello.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, I
How's it
don't know what
going?
I think I set up a private channel in the Discord so I can invite
Yeah.
people to it. Um but apparently only the mods can see it. So apparently that didn't work.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
that's what I was wondering. So I went back into your Discord and I couldn't see the private channel that I saw you had invited me to. So
Yeah,
whatever.
of course.
This worked.
This is if you couldn't tell, I really know what I'm doing in terms of technology and Discord and whatnot.
Bro, do not. Hey, you would have me fuel. You would have me fooled with your editing skills, man.
Oh yeah, totally. We were joking in the chat about how, like, my girlfriend had mentioned it or my sister mentioned it. I was like, um, the whole idea about the channel and sort of like, like the face guy and sort of like the bad Photoshop. What I like about
Mhm.
it is that one, I feel like it sort of has like this everyman feel in a way. Like it's not like some like big editing software platform where it's like, whoa, the edit, like it's just like it just feels like
Yeah.
some like idiot in his room
Mhm.
using like basic Photoshop, which is exactly what it is. Which isn't actually, I shouldn't even say Photoshop. It's like me cutting and pasting images on top of each other. I don't even know if that like actually counts as Photoshop. And two, it's that I actually can get away with not improving my editing skills whatsoever, which is great. I love that so much. Like that's my brand now. Like crappy thumbnails and crappy Photoshop. Now I never actually have to put like effort into like improving my editing skills, which is I'm so glad. Like thank God.
That's what that's what one thing that I think does honestly kind of maybe unintentionally helps your channel because it like the when you juxtapose the you know kind of silly nature of your graphics and your editing on top of the really heavy material that you cover. I think that it just kind of it honestly like helps it hit even harder.
Yeah, even people said like they saw the thumbnail and were like, "Oh, this is gonna be like a joke video, right?" And then
Oh, it's hilarious.
no.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So everyone, this is Daniel. Wanted to hop on. I know, Daniel. I know you sent me the new
Yeah.
thing, your new question
It
in
is
the chat.
totally fine if you did not get a chance to read that.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say like I figured it would just be better for you to sort of go
Yeah.
over it once we're in chat. Just
Yeah.
want to make sure everyone in chat, can you hear Daniel? Good. Is it even matched up?
Yeah. I must apologize. There is a lawnmower going on right outside, so you're gonna hear that
Oh,
occasionally.
no worries. I live in Chicago, so we usually get like, well, like this mic is pretty good. Like it's like
Oh,
I
you're
used to
probably
use.
lucky if you don't get at least 5 sirens each take.
I know. Well, I used to use the Oh, it's not there anymore. Oh yeah, my girlfriend used it. Blue Yeti, and that thing like it worked fine,
Yeah.
but it was like it had so much background noise. Like you had to turn the gain up so much to hear yourself, and
Mhm.
then you could just hear like if someone was like taking a piss in like the apartment upstairs. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I was
So
like,
I mean, yeah. So I stream on Twitch, and I also use a Blue Yeti, and it's like the getting the mic itself is just the first step. Like it takes hours of you tweaking through the settings, going through the compression, the expansion, the gain, the noise gate, all just to get it so that you don't hear every single goddamn sound around you.
precisely, yeah. Okay, cool. So like I said, we originally I know we scheduled for you for 6:30. However, the
Yeah.
person before you, they couldn't make it. So I figured like we can go until like 20-30 minutes if you want, and then Alex is up next. I think Alex, I saw you in the chat, and then Camille is also coming in. So we'll check all that out a little bit later. So yeah, if each of you guys want like 20-30 minutes to actually flesh it out, because I was a little afraid out. I didn't know if like 15 minutes would be enough. So
I will
uh,
go as long as makes you happy, my man.
thank you, my man. So yeah, so if you want to start us off, what was it? Would you say did you have a contention or question about the video, or more just sort of like your own experience,
It,
or
I would say both. So I want to start off by saying that I absolutely loved your video. Like I think that the topic that you covered, like that, it's pretty commonly said by most of just looking at your comments. It's so rarely covered with the degree of for lack of a better word, sensitivity that you do of not glossing over the fact that men are people who have these sorts of issues. And I really love how you go into the idea that especially most people that enter into these circles of pickup gurus or even like the incels, they usually come from a genuine place where they just want a little bit of help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's sort of like
yeah.
it's sort of there's sort of a hesitance to, like, even if we're talking about like people who are part of, like, alt-right groups or right-wing groups or racist
Yeah.
organizations, there's sort of like this knee-jerk reaction to think, oh, these people join these organizations because they felt that way or because they want people who also shared their views, when in reality, especially if I've been online for a long time, and not like doing
I
YouTube,
think
but
as well,
just sort of,
yeah.
yeah, not doing YouTube, but I remember like 10 years ago, or not, maybe not 10 years ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I was like watching like Ben Shapiro videos. I was watching Mao Yiannopoulos videos.
Mhm.
I'm admitting
Yep.
that live on camera, everyone.
No, no,
um,
no.
and it's
No,
amazing
don't
that,
worry, it's just you and me. There's
yeah.
nobody watching.
And it's amazing when you're watching them that you don't, it's not like this like conscious thing of like, oh, I'm watching like like alt-right content. Like, you don't really like think of it that way. You think it's a very slow, gradual process that you don't even really realize. And
Yeah,
that's why
right.
it's so difficult, because then you try to reach these people and tell them like, hey, actually, this is actually what's wrong with this sort of rhetoric. But other people will just say, it's like, oh, well, you're being racist. And then sincerely, the kid's like, what do you mean? No, I'm not. I'm literally not. I don't. And like, sincerely, they mean that. But then all it does is kind of like push them farther down the rabbit hole, and then eventually they start adopting some very even more extreme ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. I could talk about this for hours, but I do want to get into the topic that I had. I will instead recommend anybody, both you, if you haven't, and anybody who is watching. There is a channel called Innuendo Studios that's very, very similar to our boy here, and he did a like 40-minute deep dive into this very topic, and I believe it is called How to Radicalize a Normie,
Yeah, I was just
and it
gonna
goes
say.
over the thing.
I was gonna say I'm not familiar with the channel, but I'm familiar with that video.
Yeah, it's so good.
That is an
All right.
excellent video.
Yeah. So to get into it, there are two topics that I wanted to cover, but there's one that I wanted to get first, and it's the one that I sent you that's really long. So I think I'll just read it, and I'll literally just read what I typed, and let you kind of digest it. And I think that like if if nothing else, I want to make clear that like I agree with like I think 99% of your video, and I think that where I want this to go is more of like a okay, where can we go with this? Like where
Mm-hmm.
can we go? How can we go further? So here's what I wrote. You make multiple mentions of how you believe one solution to these sorts of toxic alpha male gurus is to essentially still provide a space for people with those needs while trying to weed out the more toxic aspects of those spaces. Did it ever occur to you that what you are describing essentially already exists in the form of individual or group therapy? These are well regulated spaces where you have a licensed professional presiding over either an individual or a group discussion, and that professional, more often than not, specializes within the very space that the therapy is themed around. It struck me as odd that you mentioned how one thing that got you out of one of the lowest points of your life was seeking out therapy. Yet, to the best of my recollection, and I did watch your video a couple of times, you make no mention in your entire video that this sort of thing would be an incredibly good solution for many of the people who are facing the struggles that you describe. Further, I think that a couple of the points that you make in your video, while they most certainly don't outright do it, start to toe the line of diagnosing people with mental illnesses. And while I think that your assessments are much closer to being correct for most of these people, I also believe that you may be unintentionally committing one of the same mistakes that these sorts of gurus make. They claim to know the solution that, more often than it currently is, should be addressed by a professional on an individual basis. It's my belief that the reason that we find spaces like incel and pickup gurus is because of their marketing. And if we were able to try to tackle the stigma behind going to therapy, mostly with regards to the fact that a lot of people think that going to therapy means that there's something wrong with you, we would have a far greater likelihood that people go to spaces that are run by professionals who are properly equipped to both assess the mental issues these men are facing and build a game plan for them to tackle those issues.
Absolutely. So here, let me to your first point, absolutely. It's in terms of like, I think that for a lot of people or guys who end up getting in this position of um, who are like struggling with like whether it's like strong social anxiety or just very sort of like very, I guess the best way, like just very negative thinking. Like, oh, if I approach this girl, she's gonna call me a loser and like pull my pants down. Everyone's gonna laugh at me. Like that seems to be very. That's a very common, like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That's something
I
that
was
can really.
literally about to mention, like,
Yeah,
a lot of the
exactly.
things that you described in your video are taken.
Precisely.
I mean, I don't know if you did this, but intentionally or unintentionally, taken straight out of the CBT playbook.
Mm-hmm. It's
Like when you mentioned the systemic desensitive fucking whatever that word is.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very common thing for dealing with anxiety, PTSD, like all kinds of things in that realm.
Yeah, so for people in chat, just so if you're not super familiar, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, basically it's sort of like it sounds sort of like a fancy phrase, but basically it's just sort of an umbrella term for just like strategies to try to change your thought processes. So for example, people who have like anxiety, people who have low self-confidence, what they usually do, and I think I kind of mentioned this in the video, is they'll sort of read into situations in the most soul-crushingly way possible. So, for example,
the word that you're looking for is catastrophizing.
Yes, you know what, my mod book actually used that last night, and I was like, oh, it's a good word, but I was embarrassed because I had a feeling I wasn't going to pronounce it right. Catastrophizing.
No, you're fine. Yes, catastrophizing.
Okay. Yeah, I would have said something.
Making little things into a catastrophe.
Yeah, I would have said something like catastrophize or something like stupid. Like I didn't know how to say it.
You know what? That's what it's called now. You say it, so it shall be.
So basically it's this idea of trying to. So for example, like I had a great day with a girl, and then the next day I texted her, and she hasn't texted back for 4 hours. This must mean that she hates me. She thought I was a loser, and she's out fucking Chad right now. And it's like, okay, like, or maybe she like is at work or fell asleep or just her phone's dead. And this is sort of like this can be a very, and like everyone has anxiety. Everyone sort of has this a little bit. But it can get you to the point where it actually causes you to, it causes you to do certain things that you wouldn't usually do or react certain ways. Like, so for example, in the video I mentioned, and people actually disagree with me on this. However, I still think it is a good tip, especially for guys if they do find it hard. If you're on Tinder and you get a match and you message the girl, and she doesn't respond or she stops responding, my recommendation was to unmatch them. Like, maybe give it like a day, but usually the reason I say that is because I have had more than one occasion of people hearing that people, and even like my girlfriend has mentioned this has actually happened to her or female friends of hers. If there's a girl that you were chatting with and you were having a good time, and then maybe she stopped responding, and then the match is just sitting there. Let's say that one night you're having a bad night. There's always a chance maybe you might like send something to that person like, why the fuck did you stop responding to me, you bitch, or something like that. And that it's sort of like a strong impulse sometimes to do that, and sometimes you need to be like, hey, like maybe it's just best just to like sort of control that, maybe just like unmatch, because if the person hasn't responded in like a full day, it's probably not going to happen, but you don't want to say something stupid or take any rash actions based on something that you don't even know is true. Maybe they stop responding because they just didn't see your last message or something like that. And that's not to say that you should be like unrealistic. You should like be like, like foolishly optimistic. You still want to like have a measured assessment, but the opposite of just constantly thinking of the worst possible explanation to this scenario is, and what that basically does is and this is kind of what goes back to the idea of the therapy, it can kind of rewire your brain in a sense of, you start to apply that to everything. Like, I miss my bus, I'm I'm going to be late and that my boss is going to fire me, even though this is the first time I've been late for my job in like the last 4 years. Like people actually like, and this can like become their default state. It can cause their relationships harm. It can cause potential relationships, and it can be very devastating. And CBT basically is the idea of like you can use techniques to sort of get yourself out of those ruts, out of those sort of like perpetual cycles, and eventually, ideally, your brain will stop doing that as often or as intensely. You'll start calming down a bit. Obviously, like if you have like sort of like an anxiety disorder, it can still be present, but for most people, it will tend to help not leading to them becoming constantly down themselves, constantly worried about the worst possible solution. So CBT definitely, I think, or just like in terms of individual group there, I think can be fantastic. The two big things that I think, or not, I shouldn't say two, but like the things that I think were difficult about that, and I think in terms of trying to push that is it's difficult because, well, one, the big thing is I know that, you know, therapy, depending on your financial situation or insurance situation, it can be extremely costly.
I will say, like, I live in the U.S. I know how much of a fucking nightmare it is to find a therapist.
Yeah,
and I know how much. I mean, as a mid-20s person, like, I also know the nightmare of trying to navigate insurance. So, like, me saying that is not like, oh, everybody should just have a therapist. It's that easy. Just go out and call one. Like, that's not how it works.
And to be fair, and you make a good point, all of you out there who are watching who live in countries that aren't complete shitholes, where, like, you know, the country and the government actually, like, you know, give credence to mental health care, and make it widely available for the population, you might be a little bit confused as to what I'm talking about. In the U.S., it's just like, even with insurance, it can be a nightmare sometimes. But I think without insurance, like, you're looking at least $150, $200 per session. And if you at least want, I would think, at least weekly. I mean, like, for some people it can be differently, but I think weekly. That's what I did for a while. I liked weekly. If I actually would have done more if I could, maybe even bi-weekly.
I'm the same, where I would have done more if I would be doing more if I could afford it.
Yeah, it actually gets very. I don't want to say that, but it gets very, for lack of a better word, addicting in a way. It feels, once you kind of like you open up and start to see the benefits from it, you're like, oh shit, yeah, let's keep going. This is great. This is actually working very well.
And I think that, like, one thing that, like, you know, not necessarily a contention, just like something that I personally like to preach to as many people as possible, and maybe your platform is a good place to do that. Like, I firmly believe that, like, every single person would benefit from having somebody, you know, with some kind of professional to talk to. And I wholly reject the idea that therapy is only for people who have something, quote unquote, wrong with them.
Precisely. And that was sort of like the second big point. It was actually a friend of mine who said this to me. They said, you know, I've been dealing with anxiety, and, you know, I've considered seeing someone about it. However, I have another friend who has anxiety, and they have, like, it's like very intense for them. They have like full-on panic attacks, like full-on like debilitating attacks.
Yep.
And it was kind of heartbreaking because they said, well, because it seemed like that person had it so bad, I kind of felt bad for complaining about it myself, because it's not as bad as theirs. This is actually very common, and what happens is that people feel, it's not that they necessarily like are afraid or like they have too much pride to go to therapy. That can be the cases, but it's almost like they feel guilty in a sense, like, oh, I don't think my problems are big enough that they almost feel like they would be being over dramatic if they got therapy.
I've been going to therapy for 4 years, and I have had that very idea, or like the opposite of that, you know, rammed into my head that, like, no, that's not the case. And I still tell myself that occasionally. Like, I still find myself saying that, of like, oh no, like, you don't actually have it that bad. Like, you don't need therapy.
Yeah, you're being you're overreacting. You're being a baby. You're fine. People have it so much worse than you. Yep. You should, yeah, and that's a very difficult thing to get over. And to your point, the biggest stigma, I think, of therapy is this idea that people think that you should go to therapy, or people usually think of, well, you go to therapy after something bad happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, sometimes
Mhm.
it's better to go to therapy before something bad
Mhm.
happens. Even
Exactly.
if you feel like you're doing well, it's still good just to alleviate stress, alleviate anxiety, things that can compound later down the line. Um, and then you sort of have a skill set and are kind of prepared. So when something does like really intense happen in your life, it can you kind of have the skill set and sort of have you're fortified in a sense to deal with it. Whereas if you where if you are sort of sorry, I lost train of my thought. So, or if you're just kind of going about your day and then something really bad happens in your life, you might not be able to handle it. You might have like a breakdown, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I should go to therapy, which is great. That's very good. But it's like, if you had started going before, maybe you would have been, maybe that you would have been more equipped to handle what happened to you. And just want to say, prevention before care, Barbara Locke in the chat. That is my mother. So yes, she is correct. Of
Oh.
course, now she is listening.
Exactly.
So now we're talking.
Hi, Mom.
We gotta be careful. Hi, Mom. But yeah, so it was kind of it's sort of hard because, and to your point, I think there was a hesitance to say. I also think it's sort of, unfortunately, there is a. It sounds kind of weird, and it sounds bad to say this, but there is sort of a negative connotation in telling people to seek therapy. Because how many times have you, how many times have you heard like, hey, you need therapy? And what they mean by that isn't they're saying it's like, hey, I actually want you to like, take care of yourself. What they mean is like, I think you're nuts, and I like get therapy.
Right.
And that's sort of
one of my best friends was like we got in. He was telling like venting to me about some like deep shit that he had going on. And I said to him, I was like, hey, have you considered like seeing a therapist? And his like jerk response was, have I said something that makes you think I need a therapist?
Yeah, that's really, it sucks because it's not.
And I think that that's the knee jerk reaction that most people have. And I know that I was similar for most of my life.
Yeah.
And to relate this to your video directly, I think that one piece of advice that we can give people is to not only think about it yourself, but if you see someone who maybe you start seeing going down this rabbit hole, maybe it's not a bad idea to be like, hey, have you considered talking to somebody about this? Like somebody more qualified than me.
And that was when I first made the video. I was kind of hesitant about like sort of talking, because I kind of I was even looking back, I was kind of surprised how personal I got in the video, and a lot of people in the comments were like, "What the fuck?" Like, that was pretty intense.
What do you mean by personal?
Well, just in terms of like my own experiences, like what I dealt with, like erectile dysfunction, self-harm, alcoholism. I think a lot of other creators, they'll talk about that, but sometimes they won't really go into, in terms of their own personal experiences. And like, obviously, like sometimes they just don't, they're a little bit self-conscious about discussing it. But the part of the reason I felt like that was necessary was, if you're someone who sort of seems like you have it all together, and you tell someone like, hey, maybe you should try therapy, maybe you should try this, it can kind of come off as like, and kind of going back to what we were talking about in the video, it kind of can come off as like, you don't, like, I know you're telling me this, but you don't really get it, It's like the same thing. It's like, just be confident. It's like, when people say that, most people aren't doing it to be dismissive. They aren't doing it to be dicks. But there is an element of, the fact that you're saying that kind of shows that
the perception of reality, how people receive it can mean a lot more than their intention.
Precisely. It's like, especially if you're trying to reach someone who's in a very dire state, if they even feel like a hint of like, you don't really get it, they can usually shut you out. And so the idea was, in the vid, was like, look, the reason I'm like laying all this out is because I want you to know that like, I know exactly where you've been. I'm not just saying I do. I wasn't just like, oh, I got rejected once. I'm like, no, I have been exactly where you are, and this is where it led me, and like this
Yeah, and as
horrible
much
path
as
that I
and as,
went
you
down.
know, and as much as I said, when I started talking to you just now, like, hey, be careful of like possibly like stepping down the line of diagnosing people with mental illness. You
Hmm.
talking about your experience and your being very, not graphic, but like very personal and very detailed about it, like that's what helps people relate to it. That's what
Hmm.
helps people see, like, no, this isn't just somebody you know, is going to be like, hey, just do this and you'll be cured. Like, no, this is somebody who went through all that dark shit and got out.
Um,
And, you know, sorry, go
some
ahead.
or to your point, something that's also interesting. What I found in it's very difficult to. So, for example, if we were talking about, I think that there is rampant caffeine addiction throughout our nation, especially in the
Mhm.
U.S. With like people like needing like 3 cups of coffee a day to function. Now, if you try telling someone this, um, what they'll say is like, "Oh, well, I don't have an addiction. Everyone does this." It's like, yeah, everyone,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Everyone does it.
and
That's the
so
problem.
exactly. So what sort of happens is I think this actually happens when it comes to things like anxiety and depression, where people sort
Yeah.
of feel that like so like when I was dealing with anxiety when I was younger, I didn't really realize that I had it. I didn't realize anything. I was kind of like, doesn't everyone feel like this? And then I kind of got older and I was like, no, like a lot of people don't worry about things. Like everyone has some sort of like anxiety, but like not to
Mhm.
this extent where it's like debilitating to their everyday life.
For me,
Or
that was how I found out that I had ADHD, was
yeah,
being honest about it and having somebody tell me like, no, it's actually not normal to like start taking a test and then get distracted and then look at the clock and realize 40 minutes went by and you've done nothing.
yeah, and it's or even like depression. Like I was like I'm constantly tired. I'm always like really just sad. I have no motivation. And you hear that a lot from people. Like people will like say it and stuff. But because of that, because it seems like a lot of people are dealing with it, it makes it seem like, oh, that's not depression, or that's not like, you know, that's just a general, that's just a general human thing, right? And it's like, no, it's just that everyone, a lot of people are going through it. Like that's how sort of bad things have gotten in a sense. Um, and so that makes it even more difficult because when you're trying to tell someone um, that hey, I actually like you said, like, hey, I actually think this isn't normal and you should look into it. It's hard because they don't want, they almost feel like, well, everyone else is dealing with it and they're sucking it up. So if I go
Hmm.
to therapy, I feel like I'm weak in a way. Um,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, everyone should be doing this. It's not good. We should, like, 40
Yeah.
hour, it turns out that 40-hour work weeks of sitting in a dark office with no sunlight in front of a computer is not a good way to live your life.
All
And it
right.
can,
All right. Hey, I didn't need you to get personal, all right? I didn't need you to describe my life to a T. Okay.
but it's like, that's the thing. It's like people think of like, oh, that's normal, right? It's like, no, it's really not normal.
Yeah.
Like just like
Yeah, exactly.
8 hours of Excel spreadsheets a day. Like that's not really good for your mental health. Um,
All right. I, I,
but
I like I honestly could talk to you about this shit for like hours, but I know that you're on a schedule, so just
well, I think
let me know when you want to wrap up.
yeah, we can get a couple more minutes, and then I'll invite Alex in. But yeah,
Sure.
so I think to your point, yeah, I think, and thinking back in the video, I think I was a little maybe a bit more trying to diagnose in a large scale because it's hard because especially with like mental illness because a lot of people sort of think of them as these things that it's like viral infections in the sense of like, hey, I can like give you a blood test and
And then
um
you're cured.
yeah, and I
Or,
can
or,
tell you
or,
what you
or
have
I can give you a blood test and tell you right away whether you have it or not, when that's not how mental health works.
precisely. But when it comes to say anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, bipolar, any sort of mood disorder, all of these things actually sort of overlap in a way. They're not really. I think my therapist actually put it in a good sense. Don't really think of it as anxiety or depression or bipolar. It's emotional dysregulation. That's what she told me. It's emotional
I mean, that's
dysregulation.
almost exactly what my therapist told me, funny enough.
Yeah, and things like anxiety disorders, bipolar, depression, mania, ADHD, they're just sort of ways to generalize what symptoms you seem to emulate more often than
Yeah.
others. But like you can
Yeah.
but like yeah, most people if they feel like they're depressed, they can feel all these things, OCD, anxiety. So it's not really you're not trying to find out like what you have. It's more, hey, it seems like something's wrong. Something's going on. Like you're not really right in the head in terms of your emotions and your thoughts. So let's try to kind of like get you more to a baseline. That's sort of the general idea.
It's about let's see exactly where you're at so that we can properly develop a plan for you to build, for you to grow.
Precisely. But yeah, I think you're right. It's again, I think my biggest hesitance was just if telling people like if like incel guys or like people on the verge of it like, hey, just get therapy. I think I was a little bit afraid of it coming off as flippant in a way.
Yeah.
Of it coming off as like
and to be clear,
disregarded.
like I completely understand that. Like that's not like it's not an easy thing to do, and that was why I was saying like I don't even think that I like had a problem with the way that you presented it, because like we all fucking do that. Like we all say like, oh, you're having this issue, here's how you solve it. Like we all do that all the time, and you took incredible care to to give it a great deal of nuance.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I'm glad. I hope it went well. I was again
Yeah,
up until like I
seriously,
posted it. I was like, oh shit.
I can only imagine the sort of anxious thoughts that must have been going through your head as you were ready to hit post on that. But
Yeah.
I, from the bottom of my heart, I'm so glad that you did. I think
Well,
that you
thank you, man.
said so many things that needed to be said and needed to be covered. And also, like, I know that I was like, hey, you mentioned exposure therapy. I had never heard the specific thing of asking somebody for the time in a mall. That's awesome. And like I think that's a great thing to practice for anybody who's like even afraid of like calling somebody on the phone or like just talking to strangers in general.
Yeah, it's a very common like thing that I only found out from pickup stuff, which I hate. I don't. I hated giving them credit for anything. I was like
And
that
that,
like
and
image of
that's
me.
why I can say like, hey, that's why you said it yourself. Like I think it was like you said like 80% of what they say is genuinely good advice.
It's just the simple framing of,
Yep.
hey, girls tend to like tall guys, so like if you're like 5'5", you might have a little bit of trouble, but like just put yourself out there and do good. Between like women are hypergamous sluts who only like chads with like who are 6'5". It's like these are two entirely different things and will be internalized entirely different ways by guys. So you need to be very careful about how you articulate what you're trying to say.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you took really great care to cover it in a way that it needed to be covered.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. No, this was
Good shit.
awesome. Great talk. If I do another one of these, man, you're always welcome on. I think this went if this went so well, so damn well. Again, I was kind of anxious before about like, oh, I hope it doesn't like get like too tumultuous or anything, but that was fantastic. So, thank you for the
I appreciate
awesome
it, man.
discussion.
I think that you were really great to talk to, and I'd love to talk to you more about it.
You as well, my man. Thank you so much. Have a good night, and I'll hopefully talk to you again.
Yeah, of course. Good night, chat.
All right, see you. Bye, everybody. All right, excellent. That was a great chat. But yeah, I think that's a good point in terms of to everyone out there. Try not to think of therapy as something that like you need to justify yourself to get. It's always good It's always good just to it's just in terms of like my mom said, prevention before care. It's better to go and sort of like get your thoughts out. Sometimes it may even reveal things that are going on in your life that you don't even think are problems. So that can be a case. Okay, great. Okay, sorry, because I got a couple requests. Samuel shot in chat. Yes. If you can send me a DM in Discord. I have 2 people still waiting. I'm gonna do them right now, and then you can go after. And then ask Rammer69. I also you also can call in. I'm gonna message you right now. So I will let you know when you're ready. Let me put this. Let you know when it's on. It's your turn. So yeah, but that was a great conversation. But yeah, I'm glad he pointed out too, because I hope the video didn't come off as I was like trying to downplay it or anything. So that was a great point that he made. All right. All right. So Alex, let me see. I'm gonna call you right now. All right, Alex. I see you're on. Are you good to go? I'm gonna start the voice call and patch you in. Alex?
Hello, hello.
What's up, my man?
Woohoo! All right, let me turn off the YouTube video.
Oh, no worries. Was that like an echo in the back?
Yeah, it's like a slight delay. Like I'm getting like this is like the current conversation we're having, and then like the YouTube conversation was like I don't know, maybe like 20 seconds behind. So it was just like I was like hearing two of your voices.
Yeah, there's a latency. There's like a latency option on YouTube with like you can like if you can do low latency and it like actually I forget how it goes. It's like one of the like different latencies. It's I think higher latency is better quality, but the chat is like the video is actually behind the chat or something. I'm not sure, something like that. But but yeah, cool. So everyone can hear Alex, right? I think so. Wait, say something, Alex.
Check. Can
okay,
hear
so
me?
let me turn you up a little bit. Okay, I think you should be good. Cool. All right, man. So I didn't check I forget what you put in the email, but yeah, if you just want to. So what was it? Was it more of like a question or contention or?
Not so much a question. I just kind of texted you saying like I also commented on your video when I first saw it and just saying like damn, like you literally hit like just kind of like what the previous person said, Daniel I think his name was, that like you literally kind of hit like the nail on the head of like everything, because I too have been to like hell and back with the whole like red pill pickup artist shit. And I was more on the side of like just the guy that was like already a pretty decent looking dude, average height, whatever the fuck. But they just kind of needed an extra push. But like, you know, you articulated everything like very well. When like it came to like how confusing like dating is in this day and age, we need to have a lot more open conversation on like just to make it easier for both parties, because like, you know, we kind of live in this day of age where it's just like, you know, respecting other people's spaces and privacies and like, you know, creepy guys everywhere and shit like that. But also, you know, us guys, when it comes to dating, we're kind of the ones that have to make the first move. So it's just like, okay, how do you do that without being a weirdo, without being a creep? And that causes like a lot of anxiety for like a lot of dudes, like such as myself, when I was single.
And it's funny for that point. That is really something that I think is something that is completely warranted from a lot of like red pill or pickup artist rhetoric. I think people really don't, even some other guys or some like people who were older, they don't really understand just how difficult it is in terms of like when people say like, you know, with like Me Too going on, and people sort of like have this idea of like, you know, especially with everything going on, how do I like approach women, or when should I approach women? And people kind of take it to think that guys are saying, well, just don't sexually assault them, don't. And it's like, it's not like, people aren't asking it for that reason. What they're saying is like, hey, I'm not saying it because I don't want to like get falsely accused of like rape or sexual assault or something. There are some people like that, some guys, but for the most part, it's like, hey, I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. I don't want to.
Yeah, you just don't want to come off as a creep. Like being called a creep, or like girls are like perceiving you as creepy, is like pretty like it's a shitty feeling.
Yeah, and you don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable, like even by accident, even just by.
Oh yeah, 1000%.
Yeah, it's.
I was.
So there's a sort of a like, you're not saying it. You're asking the question very genuinely, but there are a lot of bad actors who just ask it just to be dicks. So when people respond to that question, they just say things like, just talk to her, or just like approach, and it's like
Yeah,
like,
just simply talk to them. It's just like,
yeah, it's
well,
just
fucking, like, yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's yeah, going back to what you said, where it's just like there's like these two extremes of like dating advice. It's like you kind of get like the stupid like BuzzFeed like dating advice, where it's just like it just tells you like generic shit, like brush
be
your teeth,
confident. Yeah,
be confident. And it's just like, yeah, I get that. It's like I don't know how to, and then like you kind of find the red pill stuff, which it gives you a blueprint on like how to be more confident. It's just like the further down you go that rabbit hole, just the more toxic it gets. Like I kind of like I talk about this with like my friends, like in my Discord group, you know, some of my closest buddies, and I introduced one of my other like close friends to like the whole like I ran into like the whole red pill stuff through this one YouTuber named Entrepreneurs in Cars. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Oh, I've heard of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, he's a bald dude with a beard. It's like, you know, I stumbled upon him because, like, you know, when you're a young 20-something-year-old kid, don't know what to do with your life, and you're just kind of looking for general life advice on YouTube or whatever, you kind of stumble upon him. And he gives you good, decent advice, you know, just like work on yourself, blah, blah, blah. You know, some of that stuff that your dad, might have should have told you or whatever the crap. And then he started talking about this like shit called like he had videos saying like how the rational male changed my life. And then fast forward to like when I was like 22 years old, I read the Rational Male and I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. And like I shared it with my friend, and like, you know, we both got down and we both like fell down the whole red pill pickup artist like rabbit hole, like most, you know, a lot of young like 20-something-year-old guys like us. And mind you, like my friend and I, we have pretty good, we're like moderately like popular in high school. We were like, you know, pretty just average guys, like just kind of on the side of like we just need like a little bit of a push. And like, you know, I kind of the deeper that I got into the whole red pill shit, the more suspicious I became of it. And then he was just like the opposite. Like he took it and like ran with it. Like he would just like watch all the red pill podcasts, and it just kind of got to a point like where he is now, where it's just like, you know, red pill rhetoric, like their when you get deep into like the whole red pill shit, like their formula for being a confident person and like never caring what other people think is to be an absolute narcissistic asshole, which is like unfortunately what he's become. Like I hang out with him now, and it's just like not the same. Like he does like the whole posturing, like he like puffs out his chest, like I know everything that he's doing. And then he kind of like plays this whole game of like how he's like a successful like entrepreneur, when it's just like, dude, I'm just trying to talk about anime. Like I don't give a shit like how many like Bitcoin dollars you got. But like no, alpha males don't talk about like anime. Alpha males talk about business and crap like that.
Just to interject real quick, that what you just said is so perfect. Got everyone out there, guys, if you're like on like the red pill journey, if you're learning all these tips of like, oh, how to like posture yourself, how to like, you know, project dominance in body language. Women are not stupid. Women are very intuitive, like a lot more
you
so.
you look like a total asshole.
That woman has seen it 50 times before. She knows exactly what you're doing. She has seen it so many times from other men, and it just makes you look ridiculous.
Yeah. And so yeah, this is kind of like the Spark Notes like story of my friend. But yeah, like it's like what my biggest criticism became of. I just kind of had like a bit of like a, I don't know, realization, like what kind of snapped me out of like the whole red pill moment. I wouldn't say there was like one specific situation, but it was just like when I kind of learned that like the whole red pill manosphere thing was like literally just nothing but like incel jargon. I was just like, all right, yeah, I don't want to be part of this. Like, I don't want to be like associated with like incels. And I forgot where I was going. Oh yeah, and then I just kind of realized that. Sorry to cut you off. I just kind of realized that like red pill like advice, just like you said, it's like it's on the surface level, it's pretty like solid advice. It's just like the further you get deeper into it, it just gets like it just turns into like this pseudoscience like misogynistic like nonsense that is like destructive for both parties. Yeah.
Something funny you mentioned entrepreneurs in cars.
Yeah,
because if you actually watch his stuff, like, and the same thing with Roll. So for everyone in the chat, Alex mentioned the Rational Male. If you're not familiar, it's kind of like the Red Pill Bible in a sense.
It is. Yeah, it is the Red Pill Bible.
It's a book by Rollo Tomasi, who's like a very sort of like the godfather of the Red Pill movement, you could say. And
pretty much.
he named him. I don't know if that's like where he got the name. Rollo Tomasi is the name of the imaginary criminal who kills Edmund Exley's father in L.A. Confidential. I don't know why he went with that name. Like maybe he thought it sounded cool. Okay.
Wait, so that's not even his real name?
Rollo Tomasi. I mean, maybe it is, but
Oh,
Rollo
okay.
Tomasi is because I love L.A. Confidential, and I'm pissed that he uses the name. Yeah, because in the movie, Guy Pearce he's a detective, and his father was a cop, and he was killed by a mugger, but he never found out the identity of mugger, so he calls him Rollo Tomasi. It becomes sort of a symbolism for Edmund's drive to become a police officer, and it actually plays a role in the third act twist of the plot. At L.A. Confidential, that movie's fucking sick. And for those of you who don't know, because I actually don't think I actually spoke his name in the video, Rollo Tomasi is the from the video, the guy who was giving the PowerPoint seminar on women's ovulation cycles.
Yeah,
That's who.
him.
Yeah, that's the alpha male that we're talking about.
Another
I
thing
don't-
that kind of like snapped me out of like the whole red pill shit is like begrudgingly I admit that like I fucking would watch like those 21 convention like seminar videos on like how to pick up chicks or something like that, and like I would just see like the guys in the crowd and I'm like, all right, I don't want to be associated with these guys. Like I'm sorry, but like I can't like I just kind of felt weird.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned entrepreneurs in cars. I was like going through his channel a couple days ago. Like I hate it now after I've done research for the video. Fuck, I should have used incognito mode because all I'm getting is like recommendations for like
Yeah,
all like
yeah, I messed up right
entrepreneurs in
there.
cars or like think
Same.
before you sleep or all this shit. And I'm like Alexander Grace. I'm like,
Damn
God
it.
fucking damn it. With entrepreneurs in cars, like there are a couple like hey, here's how to create your own business. I'm like, oh, and he's like doing some cool videos on cars. I'm like, oh, okay, this seems chill. And then
Cool
there's
advice,
one where
yeah.
it's like, here's why single mothers are like the drain on society. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
weird thing that I see a lot in red pill
They
discourse.
shit on single moms like all the time.
It's
Jesus.
I am like I agree that like hey like raising especially like for young men, I think that not having a father or sort of like a male role model in the house, like I even mentioned in the video, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of male role models in my life, but even so I think that like having the absence of one of your mother or father, again especially for young men with your father, I think that can actually have a lot of that can actually give you a lot of difficulties. However,
Sure. Yeah.
that's another like a rhetoric. There's one thing in saying, hey, it's very difficult for young men to grow up without a father, and maybe we can find ways to fix that. And also, single mothers they raise criminals. They're terrible people because they married men who didn't stick around. I also love that part too, is how they usually like the father isn't in the picture. And even if the father like just like bailed and like the mother and kid, they still blame the single mother. It's like, well, you married this person, you should have known. And it's like, I feel like you just want to hate women. You just want to really be mad at single mothers.
That's all they're doing. That's that's like the one thing that I stumbled upon is that like a lot of like there's a podcast like my aforementioned friend that I told you about, like he got really deep into that shit. He was watching all the podcasts, like all the red pill podcasts, and they would have like this one podcast called the Red Man Group. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No. Like the Blue Man Group, like the Red Man Group.
Yeah, it's like the Blue Man, but like the Red Man. They like it's all the red pill guys, but they paint themselves red and they bang on drums and just talk about how much they hate women.
That's basic. I would actually find their content more entertaining if they just did that. Like just like cut the shit. Like just tell us what's really going on. Come on.
No, so it's like all the big like manosphere like red pill guys. So it's always like entrepreneurs in cars, Rollo Tomasi, and like some of the other ones. Like they just kind of get together and they all talk about like the same shit. Like you can go back to like 5 years like worth of their content. They're all talking about the same crap. But yeah, one thing that I just kind of realized is that all these guys are just like a bunch of like jaded, divorced men. Like that's what they are. They're just jaded guys. Like just pissed off at the world that like their marriage or the person that they found just wasn't it. It wasn't the right one. Yeah, it probably did end like pretty catastrophically. Like fucking sucks. Like shit happens, but like they just kind of like take it out on like the whole like gender itself. Like that's kind of like I just had like a lot of realizations of like what the red pill is and like what the shit I was like seeing like actually is like. That's what kind of like helped me like snap out of it. And another thing too, when I got as far down in the rabbit hole when they started talking shit about like single moms and crap like that, and then they started going on saying that like, oh yeah, like guys who marry single moms and raise their kids are beta males.
Yeah, they're
that was
cucks.
some shit.
They're...
That was some yeah, the cucks or whatever the fuck. That was some shit I found personally offensive because my dad, my blood dad, and my mom, I have a half brother, a half older brother. So in that regard, my dad is a fucking beta cuck who he isn't. He's a fucking ex-army ranger. He's been married to my mom for 20 fucking years. Like he is the most manliest man I know, and like a healthy man too.
You should have him call into Rolo and be like, "Hey, I'm an army veteran. Am I also a cuck?" And he'll be like, "Well,
yeah." And then like
I also love
my older
Rolo's. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to rap, but just
oh no, it's okay.
I've seen this and it really pisses me off. And I always see this. These guys like go on about hypergamy, which is such like a. It's not that like hypergamy isn't a thing in terms of like what they're talking about. It's that they are really bad at like it. They're very reductive in it. Like it's not about like, hey, like multiple things can be attracted to people, and all these things sort of matter in terms of like forming a relationship and attraction. They just narrow it down to if you don't have a six-pack, if you're not 6'5", and if you don't have like a 12-inch dick, no woman will ever look at you ever again. And it's like, okay, shut up. However, Rolo also uses the and I've tried to convince guys like why hypergamy, like the way they talk about it, is stupid, and they always say it's like, well, Rolo says that hypergamy isn't a straitjacket, so there are exceptions to the rule. And so basically what he means by that...
Scotsman.
Yeah, basically what he means is like, when he says hypergamy isn't a straitjacket, is I'm going to make generalizations. When I get called out on them, I can say, well, I didn't say all women. I was just making like very large generalizations about an entire gender. But it's so cowardly. It's like, just own your position. Damn it.
Yeah. No, 1000%. It's like so many. It's just like all vast generalizations and shit like that. And then like furthermore, my older half brother that I previously mentioned too, like same situation. Like he is married to a woman and who already had a kid, and he's raising her kid, and it's like totally fucking okay. So like it's just like the fuck, like how are that, like is my older brother a beta cuck too? Like he's an ex-Air Force veteran, he's fucking ripped and shit. Like is he a beta cuck too? Like what,
and think about
what are you guys going on?
And think about what that means for the kid. Like they always like they frame it as like, yeah, he's a cuck, but like hey, I thought that you guys said that like sons being raised without their fathers is bad, but now here comes like your dad, like a fantastic, brave alpha dude coming in to be that role for that kid.
To be,
and you're shitting on him for it.
And you're shitting on him for it. It's like
what the fuck?
What are you going on about? Yeah, it's just so messed up. So like when I just started noticing like all the contradictions, just like how it was just like not working out for me like personally. And another thing too is like I was trying to implement I was just trying to get girls. Like that's all I was trying to do. And at the core of it all, I was just trying to find like a meaningful relationship, which is like what you said in the video. And yeah, like I was trying to like implement the tactics that they were doing by trying to be like this alpha guy, but like that's just like not who I was like at my core. Like I'm a pretty fucking goofy and eccentric guy, so like being like this freaking like phony machismo type of dude like just wasn't working. Like I tried going out to clubs being all fucking like machismo and shit like that, trying to talk to the ladies, but I just looked like a total fucking jackass. And then I noticed when it was just like I just kind of let my guard down and I just like was who I was, and I was just like my natural goofy like flame like just silly self. I attracted like the people that I wanted like to be around, like I wasn't like it just kind of worked out better. Then I just kind of realized like, oh yeah, now I get it, to just be myself. But I had to go down that shithole journey in order to get there.
Yeah, so
get to that conclusion.
It's so funny you mentioned that because this is like the big sort of fallacy in the whole thing. It's like, hey, girls like this type of guy, so you should be that type of guy to get the girls. The problem is that that isn't really like that, it kind of goes back to the whole hypergamy thing. It's a very narrow definition of what what women want in a way, or like what they're attracted to.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot
Yeah.
more. It's a lot more complicated than that. Not, and I don't mean to just say that like, oh, everyone's different. I think that's actually reductive, because it's kind of like it's kind of useless too. Like, well, there's something for everyone. No, there are certain things that I think, not just to women, but I think that are attractive universally.
For sure.
So, for example, like confidence, of course it is. However, there are different ways you can display confidence. It's not all just like someone in the chat mentioned when we were talking about posturing in the last caller, he posturing really isn't like talking about like your actual posture. Like, having good posture is good, but posturing is more like trying to, like, you ever heard like the expression like trying to alpha dudes? Like, you go into a group of people and
trying
like, you
to AMOG. That's what it's called. AMOG.
Oh,
Alpha
God.
male the group.
Oh,
yeah.
my God.
I read the game too. The game was a good book. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the game was a good book, because it wasn't just like, here's another book on how to get chicks. It was just like talking about like the whole pickup artistry world, and how Neil Strauss kind of like went to hell and back through his experience too.
And
but, yeah, AMOG.
and this idea that like, oh, well, girls don't like weak men. It's like, okay, well, I agree, but let's break this down. What do you mean by weak? No one really likes weak people. People who don't like stay true to their word, people who don't back up their positions. No one really likes those sort of people. And so, okay, yeah, I agree with you. The problem is what they consider weak is what I would say vulnerability. And it's really shitty, because I have never had a situation or a relationship with a woman where the woman did not respond positively to me being open about me being vulnerable about certain things. That's not to say I was like blubbering at the bar like, oh, like, oh man, I've had such a hard life. But like, I've like opened up like and said something like, yeah, my dad wasn't around when I was younger, so that sort of caused, I had some issues with like sort of defining my masculinity with women, and it universally, people I think respond to it very positively, because it's not, people think it's weakness, but it's not. It's self-awareness. It's sort of like this idea that like, I recognize my own faults, what I'm struggling with, and I'm improving them. If you deny your faults, if you think you're invulnerable and you're perfect, then how can you ever improve yourself? Because you think nothing is wrong with you, and then you just become set in your own ways, and you just never are able to improve yourself as a person. But yeah, I've never met a woman ever, and I am sure, and I've probably heard stories about women. I have never met a woman, at least in my dating life, who I've been like, yeah, I've been emotional, I've had stress struggles, and they're like, bye. I'm looking for like a real alpha male who like makes like 8 figures, and it's like, I don't know like what concoction you've like made in your head of like what the average woman is like. I'm sure these women exist, absolutely. But the think that you think this is like the average woman is just preposterous. Like, that's just absurd.
Yeah, similar story in my case. Like, my current girlfriend, we've been dating for about like 1.5 years now. And I remember, as I was coming out of my red pill phase, it's like when I met her. It's when we started talking and we started like dating. That's when I kind of realized like all the red pill shit was just like nothing but fucking bullshit. Like, it did teach me some good tidbits, this, that, and the other. But for the most part, I just kind of learned that like, okay, she just kind of like likes me for who I am, and like that's okay. And like we just click naturally. And like that's all I was missing. I was just like meeting the wrong type of like people, like that's all it was. It wasn't, I wasn't doing the correct approach, or I wasn't negging her a million times enough, or whatever the fuck. Like, we just clicked, and yeah, it just went from there. But I remember, 2020's been kind of tough for me. Was tough for me because I graduated college in 2019, and 2020 hit, the pandemic hit. I lost my job, so I had to like fucking bounce through like a million different like shitty jobs And like it was just like tough. It was like mentally straining, and like there was like times when I would just kind of like confide to her and shit like that, and then like I would kick myself for like being that emotionally vulnerable because like I kind of like internalize like yeah, don't open up to your girlfriend, open up to your guys because they know the struggle. But you know, she would like she didn't fucking like leave me. She was just like, yeah, she like empathized with me. She's like, yeah, it's been a tough year. You've been working hard, this, that, whatever. Like, you're doing all right. Things are gonna be okay. And like she's still with me. And I'm just like, oh shit. What? She's not gonna leave me for another Giga Chad? What the fuck? Like
Wait, so hang
yeah.
on. You're saying that relationships are actually about emotional support to actually help each other in our times of need?
Fucking
What?
mind blowing. What?
That's what I mean. It's like, or like when red pill dudes are like, yeah, women don't like weakness, or you talking about your problems. It's like, look, even if that was, even if you met a woman like that and like you got in a relationship with her and you had to do that to keep her, that sounds like hell. Like
Yeah.
imagine like
yeah, it just sounds like hell. What the fuck?
Also, how cucked is that? Like you have to
Yeah.
tiptoe around so you don't lose your girlfriend because if you
You
say
don't
that
lose
you
your
had a
girl,
bad day,
yeah.
she's gonna like go fuck Chad. Like that
Yeah.
just sounds like really beta. Like that you're
Sounds
just
so
like
shitty.
it sounds very simpy.
Yeah.
But they of course they frame it in a way where it's like no, it's actually alpha. Like I'm like okay, yeah.
So
But
one thing that I kind of want to, I guess, talk about, something that just kind of like occurred to my head naturally, was we kind of need to, I guess, like not only like what you said previously to like the other guy about like destigmatizing like therapy, but I think we need to like destigmatize like dating advice because I remember when I was getting dating advice or like reading dating advice books, like I would kind of share it with like someone like my coworkers, my friends, and I would just kind of get like teased on. It's like, bro, you're reading a fucking dating advice book. What are you, a fucking loser? Like, it's like dating has been kind of seen as like this. Oh, you either got it or you don't. If you don't got it, well, you're kind of fucked. And it's just like, no, like dating is dating is a skill like anything else. Like going like running or dribbling a basketball. Like it's a skill. Like it takes practice. And I think we need more like just an open conversation of dating, and we need more, and I think that should garner in more ethical dating because like dating is so like stigmatized. That's why there's only two avenues to go down. It's either the whole, I don't know, just you either got it or you don't avenue, or the whole red pill rabbit hole. So
yeah.
what do you think of that? What do you think of that?
Oh no, absolutely. That's that's sort of like what the idea was. Why we've got this dichotomy we have now, where it's either be confident, don't be a creep, and it's like thank you so much, that was so helpful. Or red pill, full on like sociopath, like you have to neg her and find flaws in her beauty. Oh yeah, by the way, if you
Yeah.
ever want, I shouldn't promote his channel, but if you ever want to laugh, go on to like Matt Cross, that douche, that that used condom, Matt. 33 secrets, like oh my god.
Yeah. Oh,
It's like, dude, you're
Oh,
like
God.
you're like 40. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're like,
Shit.
oh, I don't get it. But like, yeah, exploit flaws in women's beauty. I'm like, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
hang on. So there's got to be a middle ground here, right?
Yeah.
This is actually why I think a lot of people, especially with like the pickup artist community, a lot of it exists online in the sense where like guys really want this information, but they don't want anyone to know that they're getting this information. Like they don't. It's sort of like how online dating was like 10 years ago, where everyone was online, but no one wanted to like admit it. Like where did you guys meet? At on the bus. Like when they like me and my girlfriend met on Bumble, and it's like so normalized now, but like 10 years ago, like 5 or 10, even like 5 years ago, people like were still embarrassed. Like we met on Tinder, and it was like,
Yeah.
what?
It's like, dude, it's like nobody. Yeah, it's honestly becoming like less of a big
who
deal to like
cares?
on a social. Yeah, like who gives a fuck? Like you just met someone, like you met him, like who gives a shit? Like I don't know. I made some pretty good friends like online. Does that make it fucking weird? Like who gives a shit?
It's funnier because we made this joke. I'm like, okay, so what would you rather say? Yeah, so me and my girlfriend met on Bumble. We chatted. It seemed like we liked. We got a drink. We really clicked, and now here we are 3 years later, and we're dating. Do you think that is more embarrassing than saying it's like, so yeah, we went to a bar and we were both really drunk and we had like a drunken hookup, and then the next day we got breakfast and then it turns out we clicked? Like, which story do you want to tell like to your parents when they ask you? And like, not to I shouldn't argue that, not to say that like you should be ashamed of the first story, like whatever, like sometimes that's how you found a great relationship. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just like the weird, like people are like ashamed of it for some reason, and you're like, why? It's like this is just another tool that allows you to be put in touch with people. It's people think of it almost as if it's like, oh, you can't meet people in real life, so you need to resort to online, and it's like that's such a I think that's such a reductive, regressive idea, and luckily it's going away, thank God.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just never even know where that. Looking back, I'm like, where did that even come from? Like, why did people even think of that in the first place?
Yeah. I have no clue. It's just people. I don't know. People are weird. It gets this like judgment. I don't know. Who gives a shit? What inspired you to like make this video? Like, what was like? Was there like a catalyst? Is there a moment? Has it like always been like on your head or something like that?
It was it was after the funny enough the male. When I first started the channel, after I did the Game of Thrones rewrite stuff, I actually kind of got scared because I was a little bit afraid I was gonna get kind of like pigeonholed into Game of Thrones only stuff, and I didn't want that. I was like, this is a fun project, but it was mostly around like storytelling and writing, and that's what my main focus is. I just didn't want to do like all Game of Thrones stuff because like I'm burnt out at I still have to do the finale. Sorry, everyone watching. I know the finale is late, but it's just that I'm so burnt out from Game of Thrones that I'm like, I have to like motivate myself to get back into it. But and yeah, I didn't really do anything with like social issues, but I mentioned in the video, the male body video, that really sort of like was sort of like the first Tyrion video was like sort of like the intro to my sort of like break into YouTube, but that was really what really changed, and I think will define the channel moving forward for the next however long I do it. Yeah, I woke up and I was just like, I read the whole thing with Kumail Nanjiani and the big controversy over like people accusing people of racism because they were critiquing him, and like, oh, you critique him but not Chris Evans, and like here I am, and I watch like Philion and like a lot of like bodybuilding channels. I'm like, literally people have been accusing Chris Evans of like steroid use for like the last 12 years. This is bullshit. And it kind of like drove me to make the video, and it got such a good response. I was like, oh. And a lot of people responded very positively, like, hey, this actually really helped my own body images. And I was like, oh, well, I used my experience in bodybuilding to do this one. Maybe I can use my experience in the pickup community to sort of help guys with that. And of course, it was very tumultuous. It was very anxiety inducing because it seems like on YouTube it's either very similar to dating advice. It's either you demonize it completely and don't give them no quarter, or you're full on like straight up misogynist, like women are devices in which babies are delivered, and it's like but I'm glad that a lot of people felt as if it was a good middle ground, and it was something that they felt was missing from the platform. So that was what I was really glad to see.
Yeah. No, that is something. Like there isn't enough. It just sucks. Like there isn't enough content out there that is like criticizing or challenging the red pill beliefs, because I've tried looking up like red pill debunked on YouTube or whatever, and I've only found one guy, and he has a pretty amateur YouTube page. I can't remember the name of his channel, but other than that, everything else is very pro red pill stuff. So it really kind of goes to show you like how much this shit like resonates with guys, like how deep this like issue like is of like men's dating, you know?
People don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They just like
it's either like there's nothing out there that says like, yo, fuck the red pill, here's an alternative, a much more healthier alternative. Like the only other guy that like I know of, aside from like the previous guy that I mentioned, have you ever heard of Dr. Nerdlove?
Yes. Well, it's funny, I didn't, but someone was like, oh, I've never heard of him, and then they linked me to his channel, and I've watched plenty of his videos. I just didn't know what his channel name was. And I was like, oh, hey, cool. I know him.
Yeah. I think we need like more guys like him, like channels like that kind of portray like a proper, just like more ethical dating advice that's practical too. That isn't just, oh, just be confident, just be yourself bullshit. But just, very pragmatic And also, it gives guys, like lost guys, a framework of what positive masculinity looks like because he has a lot of content out there. I think that's another thing that's like drawing these guys into red pill stuff because it may not just be dating. Like, it may just be, they feel like less of a man. Like, that's kind of how I felt when I was going through my red pill phase. Like, I was only 22 at the time, 21, whatever. And you just kind of feel like you're not a man, like you're lacking as a man, like you're not being a real man or whatever the crap like that. So you find the red pill stuff and they tell you how to be an alpha, how to be a man, blah 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 blah, this, that, and the other. And it's like damaging.
Or you'll hear like feminist rhetoric and be like, hey, this is toxic masculinity. I'm like, oh, okay, it's toxic.
Yeah, it's like two extremes. So it's just like, fuck.
Yeah, so what's the not toxic masculinity? And they're like,
and
it's like, okay,
I've kind of found thanks to the likes of Dr. Nerdlove, like a good role model, I guess, for people that are out there who are listening right now on who would be a good role model of like who is the beacon of positive masculinity. He is a fictitious character from the show Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it is Uncle Iroh. Uncle Iroh, he is a man of peace. He is a man of like honor, confidence, courage, but he is kind to Zuko. He's vulnerable with his nephew. And on the flip side, his brother Ozai, you could say that he is the epitome of toxic masculinity. He is, fucking alpha as shit, but he's just like terrible to his fucking son, and it destroyed his son, which turned Zuko into a toxic, young man who was very confused and very conflicted. He didn't feel man enough and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can teach them the lesson without chastising them,
without burning their face. Yeah.
If I were to give a role model in terms of like a great role model of masculinity, and I don't mention him directly, but I mention him in the video, kind of, Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh yeah, yeah,
like, oh my
yeah,
god,
definitely.
Uncle Phil, like if you were ever need like a just like perfect like masculine male role model, Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is just like perfect. Like he's both strong, he's strict, he's like he holds true to his principles, but he's also very soulful and heartful and can be very empathetic and sympathetic. And people say stupid shit like, oh well, yeah, he has feminine traits too. I don't
like the
ascribe.
Fuck?
I don't ascribe to the whole femininity masculinity dichotomy. I think that it's just that he just has, he's just a perfect masculine role model in terms of pretty much everything. I think he is just a perfect character in terms of showing like what I think the ideal man. Masculine man would be.
Yeah, 1000%. I think like going forward, like we're gonna have to like start thinking about that. Like, what is like the ideal, like what are ideal like masculine traits? Like, what is a good like masculine role model like going forward? Because like you said in the video, like that's being shaken up nowadays. So it's just like, I don't know. It's either like this, feminized like femboy or whatever the crap, or you're just like this toxic like misogynistic douche when there's like no middle ground. There's like a roadmap to nowhere.
Either get rid of masculinity or like go back to the 50s down. And like everyone like eat steaks for breakfast and bare knuckle box and shit, and it's like, okay, but so I think we'll eventually, I think with enough people who are on board, I think we'll eventually find a good medium. But I think the next person, I think I ran a little late, but thank you so much, man. That also was fantastic. You guys are giving me, I was a little afraid too of like, I didn't know who would be coming on, but both of you guys have been absolutely fantastic guests. And again, if I do another one of these, I'd love to talk to you again.
Oh yeah. What if I just like came on and I was just like, hey, everything you're saying is wrong, and the red pill is freaking base, and Rolo Tomasi is God. Fuck you, dude.
I will admit, I kind of was hoping I'd get at least one of those because I just want to go full like, oh, let's go. I'm gonna like rock your world right now. I'm going to just because I've heard and not to like say that like, oh, it's just me, but just like I've heard every single red pill argument so many times that I just know all the holes, and I just love seeing people like hypergamy or like alpha fucks, beta bucks. I just love poking holes, and they're like, and seeing people struggle to like try to make it fit into their ideology, and it's just hilarious. But
that's so fucking funny.
But
yeah, thanks man. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, anytime. Thank you so much, man.
All right, peace.
Awesome. No, Discord always asks me how the call goes. But yeah. So yeah, if you need a male role model, Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince. I showed his picture in the video, but god damn it, I always go back to the scene. It's so cliche, but really, it's the scene where when Will's dad comes to town and then he leaves Will, and he's there for Will when he has like his breakdown after his dad leaves. Like, it's a very cliche scene, but I think Uncle Phil's reaction in that case is he both portrays like, you know, he has the masculine front of like, you need to be there for your son and like keep your promises as a man, which some might see as like more traditionally masculine. But then when Will's having his breakdown, he just sort of listens. He doesn't really try to like, he doesn't like tell Will to like shut up and stop crying. He just listens. He just lets him out and is there for him when he needs. I think that was, yeah, Uncle Phil is based, man. Mounty's got it right. Uncle Phil is based as fuck. God damn it, he was awesome. All right, we have our next guest, Kamish. I'm going to call you in right now. Sorry, I know that we ran a little late, but I know that I think you said. Wait, did I do it right? Did I do it right? Here, let me see. Oh, are you in?
Hello?
Oh, awesome. Good.
Nice. Sorry. I think there was like a delay with YouTube, so I was like waiting, and then I was like, sorry, confusion.
Oh, it was weird because like I started the call, but it didn't show like your icon, and I was like,
oh, weird.
Am I just like on the phone with myself? Like, okay, that's weird, but
that's okay.
Did you want me to go by your first name or your Discord name, Kamish, or?
First name is fine. Also,
okay,
I apologize if you hear any noise in the background. It's graduation season right now, so all the kids are out yelling.
No worries. I think
if you hear that, okay, good.
So Camille is online.
Hello, everyone.
And I do recall your email. It was regarding the deradicalization of incels, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be me.
So if you want to just give sort of like a rundown, go right ahead.
Sure. I guess, first off the top, as everyone else has been saying, I really appreciated the video. I thought it was really great. Everyone else has heaped on a lot of praise, so I don't want to like double down or repeat what other people are saying. But I think that in terms of, you mentioned ContraPoints' video, I think, in your her video on men, I think is what it was called. And she also touches on de-radicalizing incels as well, because I find that a lot of videos that are oriented towards catching men before they fall into the big rabbit hole spiral that is like the red pill, black pill ideology, is that the goal is always to catch them before they fall. And no one really talks about what necessarily to do once they've gone too deep, potentially. And so I guess the question that I have I'm not really sure if it's a critique of your video, but sort of a question of, is there, I guess, at any point to which the tips that you talk about in your video and the stuff that you talk about reaching a helping hand to men to offer positive masculinity without necessarily giving them useless advice, is that something that could even really affect the people who've maybe gone too far off the deep end, like the incels? And if there is a way to reach those people, is that really something that can sort of be provided by online resources like this, when those issues are really systemic when it comes to the resources that they have around themselves? Like you mentioned, like not a lot of guys have like positive male role models. And so like, while like online resources like this are really valuable, if they don't necessarily have the physical support network, how helpful, I guess, is that going to be? I don't know if I'm jumping around to too many different topics, by the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think like your general question is and I think this is like the big question: how far gone is too far gone? And
Yeah.
it's so hard because it's so hard, and like I've seen a lot of content creators and even therapists, even people who actually do this for a living, struggle with this. At what point does trying to help someone become just sort of a waste of time? And that sounds bad. Maybe I shouldn't use that language. It's the like, so for example, if we're discussing people who are say they've fallen down the alt-right rabbit hole and like they're getting into like some very severe like race realism, like bell curve, like blacks are like literally like have like genetically lower IQs than whites. When you get to that point, it gets to the point where it's oh, sorry, 1 second. I think they said that was a little bit quieter to you, so I'm gonna turn you down. Okay, I think you should be good.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Because the question is now is obviously like if you have a kid who's sort of like flirting with some, you know, some like red pill ideas or like, you know, some like you know, Ben Shapiro, like sort of crap like that. They're in a position where, you know, like, oh, okay, I think we can sort of like, you know, we can talk, and we can kind of show you that like, hey, here's sort of why what you're saying or like what they're saying isn't really working. This is why this is sort of like where it's fault, and then that's sort of the point where we can kind of catch them, right? We can kind of say, hey, come on back. We can. Oh, sorry. What? No, it's still way different. I'm gonna turn it down a little more. I think we should be good now. I think we should be even now. So, however, if I'm talking to someone and they're just spouting just like race realist, like straight up, like full on bell curve IQ points about like black people, at some point like even me, I would be like, I don't know what to tell you right now. I can't. I don't. Like, how can I even begin to like? You've bought into so much of this that I don't know. Anything I tell you is you're just gonna shoot down. And this is sort of what I actually didn't really go into it in the video. But this is sort of
you lightly touched on it, and I know that it's kind of like it could be a full separate topic itself as well.
So like someone like in the video, like someone like who was on the cusp of becoming like Elliot Rogers, like that's someone who that person needs immediate drastic psychiatric help. Like that's not someone who you can like call and say like, hey buddy, how's it going? Like he watched these like YouTube videos. Like that is someone that needed to be. And I don't really know what his pathology was. Maybe he dealt with some mental disorders or of the sort that really sort of exacerbated it. But that's sort of like a circumstance where they are way down the line. There's the difference between, if we're talking about incels in particular, when guys go from what is called from red pill to black pilled. So yeah, so basically red pilled is sort of like, hey, you know, this is how women are, and you have to do this to get them, and yada yada yada. And that is toxic in and of itself. But at least at that point, you're dealing with men who are still in the mindset of they're still open to, you know, they're still open to relationships. They're putting effort into themselves. You know, you're kind of okay. They're in a space, but maybe we can kind of like reach out to them and sort of like, hey, let's like change your way of thinking and we can fix this. However, then you get to people who are black pilled, and black pilled people are basically people who have just given up. They're like, say like they're guys who are like, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, I'm too short, women are never gonna love me, I am never gonna get a girlfriend, I'm always gonna be alone, and nothing's good enough for me, so I'm just going to just give up entirely and just like stay inside and be on the computer. At that point, and that's how, and most of these guys end up becoming part of these incel communities where they just chat with other people in the communities, and basically just throw around toxic rhetoric of just like women are whores, chads, tyrones, whatever. And at that point, they're so bought into this idea that they will never find someone. And they're so pathetic and they're so not good enough that you trying to convince them that, like, hey, you know, maybe we could go to the gym or like hit the mall or something, that they just won't even budge, because it's almost comforting in a way. It's almost comforting to think of. It sounds weird, but there's a certain comfort in thinking my pain isn't my own doing. I am not a failure because of my own lack of effort. I'm a failure because of other of factors out of my control. And there's a weird comfort to that. There's a weird sort of, oh, it's not my fault. But trying to get someone away from that comfort zone, pull them out of it, and is horrifying to a lot of these guys. So yeah, unfortunately, I think in a lot of cases, like it's very similar to when like say like drug rehab facilities, they will they say it's like, look, I can't help you unless you want to help yourself, right? We can't make you clean. We can help. We can give you all the tools, give you the facilities, whatever, but you have to want this. And if you reach a point where you're dealing with men who are just don't care anymore, they just completely given up, then whatever you, I don't know how you can help them.
Yeah, and I think that was the point where it's sort of, I guess, where I was running into, and I know that kind of your video is more mainly geared towards, like in the little skit that I think you were doing towards the middle of your video, where you were talking about the guy who's wandering into like pickup culture and then seeing how it's kind of like a bunch of clowns, but then seeing that there's really no viable alternative, so that he feels like he has to just kind of, the pickup community is all he has. And I think you were kind of gearing it towards guys like that who are maybe just starting or have a lot of reservations about like that type of rhetoric. But I think what I find, I guess, kind of as like a big question is that I know that, like the first caller mentioned, that if someone's at the point of being black-pilled, they probably just need intensive therapy, and there's really not much any sort of online resource can do to help them on their own. But I guess I don't know if I'm just going around in circles with my comment, but I feel like there's, in terms of like helping these people kind of come out of this red pill ideology, I think that one, having positive male role models is a very big step. But at the same time, I wonder exactly how much other further steps have to be put in place in addition to that, if that makes sense. And I guess I know that your video is like a very great first start, but I wonder, is it sort of like, it feels like it puts a lot of on the individual guy to want to engage with your video and also be self-reflective. And I think I saw someone in the chat as well mention that sometimes that self-reflective thing is really hard to expect of people. And I wonder how limited does that make the reach of guys that we could that you could potentially help with your video, of guys who are willing to be self-reflective about potentially how their behavior isn't totally serving them and how certain rhetoric isn't serving them, and how many people might just be comforted by the already existing red pill rhetoric, and that's where I guess we can't help them, and they've already are too far gone. I guess I wonder where that line is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very different, and that's sort of like the danger in the sense of, you know, there are people who commented on the video where they would like leave a comment about like, hey, yeah, and they kind of disagree with something, and I was like, oh, okay, let me interact, and we would go back and forth like 4 or 5 times, and eventually it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't think you're not open. You just want me to reaffirm what you want me to say. You don't actually want me to give you an answer or alternative. You just want me to tell you what you want to hear. And at that point, it's like, because to your point, when it comes to therapy, the whole point of therapy isn't to, because like you said, telling someone directly what their problem is, even if like a therapist, like they're trained, they usually know. Like
Mhm.
from their first meeting, they know exactly what's, maybe not like the particulars, but they really have an idea of like how they need to help you and what you need to fix. However, if you just tell someone that directly, that can actually be very threatening. That can be very, it can make people sort of like recoil and like double down. So what therapists do is the whole art of, I shouldn't say art, or the whole practice or skill or craft of therapy, if you will, is basically trying, like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs to that conclusion, basically. It's sort of like again, the therapist like knows, like, I know what, like, you're in a toxic relationship or you're struggling with like OCD, but I can't just say that to you. I need to sort of like slowly work, like just a little at a time.
Yeah.
And you're able to do it in a very controlled environment. And that's sort of why it works, is that you're not, because you're not telling them to like, you're not telling them what's wrong. You're helping them figure it out in their own way. That you're kind of almost like training them to be self-reflective. And that's why therapy works so well. However, the issue is how do you get someone to therapy? Because you have to take that first step of actually going and calling the doctor and going into the room. When it comes to online, like let's say incel communities, the problem comes because you can try to do that, but it's such an uncontrollable environment that's very difficult to keep. Because what therapists will sometimes do, or like what sort of like CBT does, is they'll sometimes validate feelings that they really shouldn't validate. If
Yeah.
say but they're doing it strategically. They're doing it to show you sort of like, to kind of like work you into it. However, if you do that online, that runs the risk of, like, so for example, let's say that I wanted to make a video about, hey, here, in defense of incels, like to really try to like reach incels and empathize with them. Depending on how I went about it, maybe it did reach incels. However, I started looking through the comments and they're all just like incel filth, just like terrible rhetoric. Women are whores. Yeah, feminism is why the U.S. is collapsing or whatever. And then I realized, like, oh shit, I tried to help, but maybe I'm adding to the problem because I'm putting this media out into a uncontrollable environment with people who will purposefully take my good intention media and like misrepresent it or like twist it for their own goals to fit their own. And it's so, when you're doing it online, it's impossible, because how do you control that environment? How do you control an audience of possibly tens of thousands of people? And so to try to answer your question, like you can try, but, and so like, yeah, the main focus was sort of like guys who were kind of like right on the cusp, guys who were kind of like,
and that's the vibe I got from watching. And I think, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry, but just to answer your question, like when it comes to like, if I were to log into like an incel community and try to like reach people there, I have no idea how I would, how could, it's like, it would be very similar to like walking into a KKK rally and
and then just being like, oh fuck, I don't know what to do.
Even if you're trying to be, even if you're trying to like in good faith help people, how do you do it without unintentionally maybe making things worse or validating things that maybe you don't want to be, or just saying things that are just incredibly emotionally taxing on you.
At that point, I think like when someone's that deep into bigotry, it's really hard to engage with them in good faith, because it's so, you have to wade through so much of their ideology to even get there, to the point where good faith arguments don't even really seem to work. But I think I need to clarify my question, because I think what I meant to say wasn't necessarily like how do we specifically take the incels themselves and like de-radicalize them back into sort of a more healthy normal perspective of viewing things, because that's like such a big ordeal. But I guess it's more of, I guess, how do we, and I think you touched on this a little bit, how it's like hard to tell, but how do we delineate from the guys who are willing to be self-reflective and look at themselves, who are at the cusp of falling into like all of this rhetoric, but can still be helped, and the ones who just kind of want to keep feeding that that kind of dark spiral of misogynistic kind of thinking. Like, and is there a way to tell besides like on a one-to-one basis, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean,
and I don't know if that question is just impossible to answer.
It's a great question, and it's so hard because the question is, and this is what I've heard from a lot of people, even from like members of my Discord. I'll mention like, hey, I had this conversation with someone in chat, and we were trying to work things out, and people will tell me, you know, that's great that you're doing that, but you know, I don't want you to waste your time or expend your energy in trying to reach people who don't want to be reached, or who like it's just a waste of time. And however, the flip side of that is that, and this is I think what has sort of happened to, especially if we're talking about in terms of just politics, what has really sort of hurt the left a lot, like leftist or like liberals or Democrats, whatever you want to call it, but like sort of like more lefties, if you will. What's really hurt them is there is a certain hesitance, I think, to be open at all, where even if someone, and this is sort of what happened with pickup artistry, where, hey, we're not even going to give some guys the benefit of the doubt. We're just, if you're a guy who's even like flirting with pickup artistry rhetoric, you are a misogynist, you're a piece of shit, fuck you, I don't even want to talk to you. So that's not good, because it basically, because maybe that is someone that you could have reached, but now they're just going to double down. Okay, well, fuck you. I'm going to go, these guys want to talk to me, I'll help them out. So to answer your question, I don't really think there is a way, like maybe contextually, if you try to reach them and they're just like not budging after like an hour-long conversation, it's like, oh, okay, well, if you're not going to budge at all, then I don't think this is productive at all. However, I'm very hesitant of going the other. I think that you always need to give the benefit of the doubt. Even if you feel like someone is completely gone, still try to talk to him as a human. At least give them an hour.
Yeah.
If they're in for a conversation, talk to them for an hour and really try. Do your best. But if after an hour they haven't budged, walk away. My only fear is that people will stop trying completely. They will just give up. They will not give the benefit of the doubt. And what will happen is there are people out there who we could save, who we could brought back from the fold, and now they're just permanently lost because we never even gave them a chance.
Yeah, I think I have that concern as well, and it's really, I think on sort of like the left side of YouTube, I know that there's a big tendency to kind of say fuck you to the people who are kind of maybe at the border and expressing things that maybe aren't necessarily, I don't want to say PC because that word kind of has lost a bit of meaning, but like aren't saying things that are saying things that are quote unquote problematic, that might be showing that they're leaning towards maybe this rhetoric because they're getting a little lost. And then the response is like, well, if they lean towards that way in the first place, then like, fuck them, they suck. Which like, I don't think that's not fair, because you don't necessarily know why they're leaning that way. And they very clearly need help. At the same time, I think it's also kind of hard because I know that to be a resource to reach out and help people like that, for some people, depending on who you are, is harder than for others. Like, I think, which is why I think it's great that you're doing this, because like as a guy who has like gone through some similar stuff, it's easy for you to empathize and also to show other guys that they can be understood in that way. I think for other people who want to help, like myself, as much as like I would like to, it's a little bit harder sometimes when it's like some of the thoughts you're engaging with them are for while them are ways that they're comforting themselves. For me, are things that make me feel like, I feel a little unsafe in this conversation now. So it's like weird where you want to help, but at the same time, yeah.
It's like telling a
Yeah,
black person to be like, hey, you should be empathetic to alt-right Nazis because they,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
I'm not going to expect a like a black
yeah,
person to be able to do that. So as you as a woman,
yeah.
I wouldn't expect you to like. So I actually think this was a good point that someone brought up in the video, and I didn't really make it clear in the video explicitly, and I really should have. And I kind of explore it, but not really. Where I say, hey, we need to be more empathetic. What I mean by that is, or I think I should have explicitly stated, I think that should fall more on the people who have been down that road. Like, so for example, someone like myself who really understand it. Because that, I think that with those people, that is the best chance you have of reaching them. However, if like you as a woman, I don't expect you to be able, or not to be able, but I don't expect you that you should have the burden of having to speak to incels
Oh,
who are
yeah.
just saying like these like ridiculous things that like women are fucking whores and sluts and like cunts, and then just like like the fact that if you like, I mean, like I'm sure they're like you're incredibly well spoken. I'm sure that you
thanks.
could like stomach that for a little bit, but I don't think that you shouldn't have to sit there and listen to that crap. But it should. I think
Yeah, no.
I think that responsibility rests on guys who have like sort of like been in those communities. Like, okay, we need to be the ones who take on that burden because we've made mistakes. We've learned from our mistakes, but we need to sort of like make up for it now. But yeah,
no,
I wouldn't
and I
put
think
that onus on women.
Yeah, and I think I totally. I know that you said you didn't call it out explicitly like that, but I know if I remember correctly, I know you gave like at least one statement towards the end where you were saying that this is kind of only something that can really be effectively done by guys who have kind of gone through it, and like,
or I think even have I think are the ones who, and not to say, to like make a moral argument, but I think to some extent you should have an obligation to try, because if you have engaged in this, you have to some extent, even when I was into it, I to some extent perpetuated in this sort of rhetoric. Maybe not in like a grand scale, like not like a huge YouTube channel, but like to some extent, I did have a hand in perpetuating this. So I think that.
Oh
like,
no,
and
sorry, so I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to say I really appreciate you saying that, and I don't think that you've like been perpetuating this at all. I think it's really cool for you to be like acknowledging that like for women it's a little bit harder, but also I just want to first of all like I don't want to feel like I'm putting you on the spot or anything at all.
Oh,
like
no, not at all.
yeah. Yeah, I think you're being incredibly really respectful about this, and that's also why I wanted to call in, because I thought like even as like a woman, I thought it was really cool like what you were saying and approaching this from a point where you were obviously aiming this towards guys as your main audience, but you were also being still really respectful, and which is something that's really hard to strike, that balance. So I think you're doing a great job so far. So
well, thank you. And just to be clear, I meant not necessarily like on through the video, but I meant back in like when I was in my like pickup artist days.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
like, that
gotcha.
Because looking back, like I think there were cases where like I like there was never a situation where like a woman said no when I like forced her or anything. But looking back, were there probably situations where, and like I spoke of this in the video, but like here I am on live. Are there probably situations where I was on a date with a woman and we were at a bar and we were both drinking, and maybe I went in for a kiss or like something like that, and she didn't say no, but maybe I wasn't really being conscious enough of her body language or the signs maybe she was giving me, and maybe I did something that did make her feel uncomfortable. I think that's more than likely. And thinking back on that, I'm like, and like some guys will like rationalize. It's like, oh well, she didn't say no. And it's like, that's not really I'm not saying that like like going full on like, oh well, all these guys are like straight up predators. It's like that's too far in the other direction. But I think it's like it's just, and again, I'm not saying like you should be held like super accountable for it, but it's more like it looking back, it seems like there were probably things I did looking back that I wasn't proud of, and I could, and I think you can easily, if we're talking about, I think, a good standard of masculinity, it's very easy to say, oh, well, I'm not like that anymore, so so I'm good. I don't have any obligation to anyone. You are correct, but I think a good standard of, if we're talking about like if you want like sort of like a good standard of masculinity, is to sort of hold obligation to yourself. You know, if in the past you've done things that you aren't proud of, or you made mistakes, you know, maybe try to just, it's not like a one for one thing, but like try to spread awareness of it. Like, hey, these were my experiences. These are things I did.
Yeah.
You should just something to be wary about, just something to be conscious of. It doesn't mean like, again, you should be like held accountable, like, or whatever, but it just, for me looking back, it's like, I feel like there is some obligation there. Like, I did do things that I wasn't proud of. I did sort of perpetuate a culture that I now completely condemn. And so I think this is my attempt to try to not absolve myself, but to just try to, what's the word I'm looking for? To pay it forward, I guess. My mom always made me watch that movie when I was a kid with Haley Joel Osment, like to pay it forward in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's really admirable. Like for one thing, because it's I think it's admirable because you're kind of sticking your neck out a bit while doing it. Because I think not that long ago, do you know Dr. K, the streamer, by any chance?
Dr. K? I don't think so, no.
Yeah. He does he does something called like the Healthy Gamer, which is sort of it's an outreach group for gamers who want some personal like mental health coaching. It's not like full on therapy, but it's someone who's like from sort of the gaming world who also has mental health like experience, who can help them work through like either ranging anything from addictions to video games to just general sort of hangups that they need help on. And he actually said that he wanted to talk about male issues specifically in regards to dating and relationships, but he was too scared to because he thought it would get him in really big trouble. So I think the very fact that you're just even addressing it at all is like a really big deal. And like the whole paying it forward thing, I assume it's going to pay dividends to you because you're like taking those like big first steps forward. And I think for people like me, I'm like, I know I'm a woman and there's also only so much I can do to relate to other guys. So there's only so much I can do to in like my own small way to like pay it forward. But I've had a couple of guy friends who I know would have really appreciated seeing your video at certain points in their life, had they been there. And it's really cool seeing that being put out there, to know that it could have helped some of my friends back then, and that there's going to be some guys out there that it can help as well. And like, I'm rambling now, but yeah.
Here, and this isn't, and again, I just to just disclaim to people in the chat or watching, I don't ascribe to the dichotomy of like masculine and feminine. So when I say if something is this is like a good masculine thing, I don't necessarily mean the opposite is feminine. I think that's really stupid and harmful.
Yeah.
If we're going to, if I had to give people or men out there a good sort of benchmark for masculinity, it's something my mother taught me when I was a kid. We would be out, like I live in Chicago now, but I used to live in Boston, and you know, it would snow a lot during the winter, so I would go out with my mom and help her shovel, and she would tell me like, hey, go shovel the neighbor's front steps, and I'd be like what? No. And I was like, or like, are they good? Like, do they do ours? And she was like, no. I'm like, just do it. And I think what that sort of instilled in me was, and I hear this question a lot from a lot of guys who are really not well off, why should I do nice things for people if they're not going to return the favor? And it's because that's what a man does. That's a good, or not even a man. That's just, I think, what a quality person does. If you're just doing something because you think you can get some out of it, that's a business transaction. You're not doing something. But if you're shoveling your front steps and you see that your neighbor's isn't shoveled, it'll take you like 2 minutes, 5 minutes out of your day. It's and that sort of mentality, I think, will not, I think, just sort of give you a general sense of optimism, or a sense of sort of, in your personality. But just, you don't want to get to a point where you're only doing good things because you think you can get something out of it. You just want to become a person who is a good way to put it is spreading more good than maybe they're receiving themselves. And of course, there is always a limit to that. You don't want to like over endow yourself, but even if it's something small, I think that is a very good rule of thumb, a very good standard to set for yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's also like that sounds like a very great like example of positive masculinity too, if we want to use like words like that, of like putting that good back into the world, of like paying it forward. That's kind of like the same thing as like just the nebulous sort of male strength that people talk about, but in more like kind of concrete language. And like to your point about like men and women or male female being different, I think I agree that at the end of the day, most of it is kind of like masculinity and femininity aren't opposites. They kind of complement each other. But I do think that as much as it's good to say that, we're all people and that we all go through the same human experience, I think there are certain things that like it's just hard to empathize with across the genders, and that's just kind of how experience goes.
You don't
and
want
it's
to
why
you don't want to make too much of a dichotomy, but ignoring the different experiences of men and women is invalidating to both men and women.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that as much as that's kind of been a point that's been very much stated by women, I do also think men should get a part of that as well. That like saying things that dismiss men's issues is also invalidating to them. And
to its credit, I have a lot of like people will say, and I might even turn some people off for saying this, but I've actually even been hesitant in the past to identify as a feminist for this very reason. And the fact that I think that the current feminist, like sort of modern feminism, has to some extent, I think, become like, I think some like guys are just nuts when they talk about like, oh, it's like a scourge of like the humanity. But I think that there is a lot of flippancy in terms of disregarding. There's sort of like a I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. There's sort of an overgeneralization of, oh, well, women have it harder, so we don't really have to focus on, or like it kind of like perpetuates this idea that like, well, men have it easier, so it's okay to do things that or say things about men that we wouldn't say about women. And it's like like something like hashtag like men are trash, something like that, something small. And but to its credit, I've seen a lot of feminists come out and say like, and like there are some like stubborn women who were like, no, we should be able to say this. And I think those women need to get with the program. But to its credit, I actually think there are many feminists who were saying like, actually, and I respect them for this. They're like, actually, you know what? No, this isn't good. We need to stop this. This is kind of going against what we claim to stand for. And if we're going to stay true to those principles, we need to hold ourselves to the same standards. And I respect the hell out of that. It's when I see someone just mentioned, I mentioned in the video, like female dating strategies. There's sort of this which
is terrifying.
There's sort of this feel of like, hey, we're being toxic, but it's okay because women have had it hard in life. And like I'm not like disregarding that, of course, But if you're going to use that to defend, if you're just trying to understand or give context, that's fine. Like I think that's important. But if you're trying to use your pain or the pain of other women to defend toxicity, I find that pretty disgusting, because it's just, you're not being self-reflective. You're pushing away any sort of, you're not really standing up for what you say you believe in. You're just staying in your own bubble and defending your own not so good rhetoric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think what's, I guess, hard, I know that I've also had guy friends who have said that they want to say that they support feminism, but because of the connotations that comes with, especially amongst other men who might have a certain perception of feminism, they tend to shy away from that. And it's kind of a shame, because I think feminism is such a broad movement that's, it's really unhelpful to say that you're a feminist at this point, because it could mean so many different things.
It's difficult.
So,
it's sort of like,
yeah.
I think feminism's, and it's hard to like articulate this. I think feminism's large umbrella is both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness, in the sense that I think that it's because it has a lot of variance and ideologies and like intersectionality. I think that's great. However, because of that, it sort of makes it difficult. So if I were to ask you, okay, so what is a feminist? And like most people would say, well, you believe in equality. It's like, okay, but that's pretty vague. You need to kind of give me a
what does that
worldview.
mean? Yeah.
Because you can say, a great example I use is, oh, I'm a freedomist. I believe in freedom. It's like, that's very, I believe in the freedom to pollute water. I believe in the freedom to own a tank or a nuclear weapon if I'm just like a citizen. And it's like, there are certain things, like freedom sounds great, but then there are certain things where, depending on what you mean by that, like you shouldn't have the freedom to like go out and harass people or touch people or steal people's stuff. So you really have to narrow it down a little bit and give us more specific worldview. And I think that's sort of the issue that feminism is having, in the sense that they want to be accepting of these ideologies, but they're kind of having trouble forming it into a very specific set of. So a great example is if we were talking about OnlyFans or like say sex workers, is that feminist or is it not feminist? And it's kind of like, well, I can kind of see both sides.
It depends. So, yeah, it really depends on how you're looking at it.
But then at that point, then if it can be either way, then what is even the point of even talking about it in that context? Because
Oh yeah, and I think I really wish that talking about feminism didn't naturally not naturally, or in modern discourse, it seems like talking about feminism precludes talking about men's issues at all, as if like you're saying that by being a feminist, you're just stating that women's issues matter more. I really wish that didn't come with the same connotation, because it really limits what you can talk about, and then it also makes certain people feel like they can't speak out. But yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't really know what the solution is. And I think that there is a part of the reason you mentioned that, why there is sort of like a knee-jerk reaction to feminism, I think that is in part because of, like, you know, there is a lot of bad faith actors on the other side of like the men's rights movement, red pill rhetoric. There are actually a lot of good people within those movements, but I think on the whole, or like the most prominent voices, oftentimes, they're really like weirdly critical of like, they attack feminism like in really bad faith. And I'm not even someone who really assigns myself to it, but like even I'm like what the hell? Like this is a little bit like this is like the downfall of Western society. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? However, I think if feminism people or the proponents of feminism think that it's important, I think the best way to do it is to try and maybe not meet halfway, but sort of take those critiques, even if they are in bad faith, and maybe just listen. Okay, so what is it in our current sort of discourse that is turning people off? And maybe we can, not to say like you should like, hey, like give the other side a pat on the back, like, hey, good point. But it's more like, hey, let's take this and actually use it to our advantage, as tips to try to like bring more people over and be more appealing to people. I think unfortunately what's so sad is a lot of people I think compromise is a sign of defeat, or like some sort of like concession is like you are like a sign of weakness in a way. I think that's really, I find that so a very toxic attitude.
Yeah.
You always
I'd
have to
agree.
be you always have to be self-reflective. If like even if someone who is in bad faith gives you a critique, I always say like think about it, like see what if what they are saying actually has merit. If not, just you can throw it out. But if so, maybe just consider it. Just, you don't have to do anything drastic or rash. Just consider it. Maybe see if your messaging is coming off this way to people, and maybe divert course or change course a little bit for your own sake, not because you owe it to them, but for your own sake, for your own cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, like, and that's also an example of positive masculinity as well. But yeah, well, that's I really want to continue talking. I also don't want to take up too much time, but I have to bounce actually. Also, my neighbor upstairs just started her Peloton, so
Oh,
I'm really
okay.
worried it's too loud for you.
Oh, we can't hear it.
I don't know
but,
why.
No worries.
Yeah, I don't know why someone in an apartment complex has a Peloton and thinks that's okay, but whatever. It's the quarantine, I guess.
You gotta
But
get a Peloton, right?
yeah,
I guess. I don't
they
know
also
why.
have. Yeah, Peloton has this thing too, not to get off track, but they have a thing that's like you have like these punching bag things, so you can have like fighting like classes on top of your like tricycle spin classes too. So they look at your punching form. It's weird. But
I feel like
anyway.
Pelotons are becoming more or less like things that you don't actually use, but things you put in your living room, so when people come over, they can be like, oh, they have a
Yeah.
Peloton.
Yeah, it's like, wow, they must be doing so well. It's kind of like the equivalent of when you get like a really thick like book that you put on your coffee table to make people think like you're actually reading something and they get really impressed with you. Yeah.
That's
But,
basically my whole DVD collection. Like, these are movies like I
yeah.
haven't watched, but they're like, ooh, that's a fancy French film. Like, hell yeah, it is. I'm cultured and shit. Like, I don't know, but
Have I watched it? No.
no, I have not. But yeah, so I'll let you
yeah.
go. But yeah, no, thank you
Okay.
so much. This was fantastic.
No worries. And actually, before I go, I just wanted to say this is sort of related to the video or not, but when you mentioned about the exposure therapy thing, for guys kind of dipping their toes into interacting with women, I thought that was so cool, because when I used to have really big social anxiety when I was younger, and that's how, even though it was for a different reason, that's how I started acclimating myself to talking to strangers. I would like bit by bit do small things, like interact with my barista, like slowly escalate things where I was having full-on conversations with strangers. So I was like, wow, someone else does that too. That was great. So
it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will, even without you realizing it, it will make things a lot better.
Yeah. So it's cool. But again, thank you so much for having me on. It was really cool getting to talk to you. I really appreciate your work. I've been around since I think you dropped your second Game of Thrones video. So it's really cool seeing you evolve to this point where you're talking about such important issues.
Well, thank you so much. The pleasure is mine.
Thanks. All right. I hope the rest of the stream goes well.
Oh, I think it will. You guys have set the bar good, so I think we're good.
Okay, thanks. All right. Bye, chat. Bye, Mac.
Take care. Bye-bye. Say bye, everybody.
Bye.
Awesome. That was another great one. It was going fantastically. Like, excellent conversations. Okay. Crap. Space Bebop. I think you were up next. I think that is who I was next. So I think it was Space, and then Ass Rammer. I'm very looking forward to that conversation. Ass Rammer. I'm just kidding. Space Bebop, I'm calling you now. I think that is who are next. I can probably go. It is 8:15 now. So what I'm hoping is Space Bebop, you're just hopped on. Space Bebop, I think we can go maybe like 20, 25 minutes, and then Ask Rimmer, we can do another 20 minutes. I think I have to get going at 9. I know that a couple other people did message me, DM me for requests. I know we kind of got carried away with. I think like originally I
Don't
was gonna
sweat it. I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I think like I was originally gonna do 15 minutes, but I think 15 minutes I think was a little limiting. So to the other people who, if I don't get to you guys tonight, I'll definitely do a part 2. This has been fantastic so far. So if I don't get to you guys tonight, I'll make sure to just DM me, and we'll make sure to do a part 2, and we'll make this into a more of a series. Okay. Space Bebop. Can you actually speak real quick? I just want to make sure your mic is good.
Sure thing. Hello.
Okay, I think he's good, everyone, right? I think so. We'll just get going, and then I'll keep an eye on it and turn you up if need. All right. Welcome, man. How's it going?
You know what? It's pretty great. I'm a little nervous. It's like 238 people just watching me listen. It's like, oh god.
No worries. Well, that was kind of the thing was like the Q&A. I think is like that's really good. I'll turn up my mic. I don't think I can turn up my mic. I think I'm like at the very here. Let me just try moving it closer to my mouth. Hopefully that'll work. So yeah, it's hard because I think it's more people who are because it's kind of nerve wracking, with even like when I was first starting out with like live streaming, it was like like even just talking, I was like, whoa. But you just kind of like get used to it. But it's more of a thing like once you get going and talking, it's fine. But like that like first little bit is what makes it difficult. But,
oh, for sure. I used to do a lot of theater art, so it's like I know the feeling. So
yeah, gotcha. Okay, yeah. So did you have a question, contention?
Yeah. Here's my question. So just a little background. It's like for me, it's like obviously it's like, there are like people that like I'm attracted to outside. It could be like from anywhere, like from work or school and stuff like that. But I always get that feeling. It's like, oh man, I really like this person, or I think I'm attracted. I want to know them and stuff like that, but I don't want to disturb them or kind of make them feel awkward and stuff like that. So would it be like awkward to go to a person and just say like, "Hey, listen, I thought you were," and just be kind of honest with them and just like, "Listen, I thought you were attracted and stuff like that, and I wanted to get to know you though. I don't want to put you in an awkward position and stuff like that. Could we get coffee and stuff like that?" Or do you think that's like way too honest to like approach a person like that?
Well, it's actually interesting because I spoke about in the video how like negging. So the whole idea of it is sort of this idea that when you approach a woman, you kind of want to put off this vibe of like, oh, is this guy interested? Is he, what's going on? The big problem with that, and this is something that I kind of learned like during my experience, is like if you're a guy and you approach a woman at a bar, it's like you can like pretend, you can like try to like play it off as like, oh, I'm not interested, I don't even know you, but like, well, you approached her at a bar,
right?
It's
like
almost
you,
sort of like,
you obviously have a reason.
Yeah, it's almost like implicit in a sense. But to your question, what's so funny is that there are actually a lot of other pickup artists, like seduction guys, who that's actually their go-to strategy. Is they just kind of go out to a woman and they like straight off the marker, like, "Hey, I thought you were cute. I just wanted to chat with you." And what this is actually good with, what I think this actually works to some extent, it's hard because on one hand that can actually be very like depending on the woman, depending on the circumstances.
Sorry to interrupt, but I feel like, I feel like if I was in that kind of position, I would feel kind of like maybe like awkward, like, whoa, that's intimidating that a person would just like straight up just say that off the bat kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think that's okay to some extent. I think in most cases, especially, and again, you kind of have to read the situation. If you're approaching a woman who it seems like she's very social, very open, this is like, it's probably fine. It's like, hey, and again, it might be implicit. Again, if you approach a woman in like a bar or a club or something, it's probably like implicit that like, hey, that I'm interested in you. But I think that saying that, and like not in like a creepy way, like not like what's up, bitch, like, but like saying that's like,
Right.
hey, I thought you were really interesting, and I wanted to see if I wanted to get to know you a bit better and see what you were all about. What's great about that too is this is actually a lot of people ask me about this when it comes to friend zoning. A lot of guys have a misconception about how this process works. Most guys think that when you approach a woman, or like let's say you start talking to a woman, you meet her through your friend group, whatever, and you establish a relationship with her, you hear this thing of like, oh well, right away she puts you into like the prospect or like friend category, like within like 2 minutes of meeting you, and it's like, no, that's kind of silly when you think about it, because she doesn't know, like, does like maybe like there are cases like maybe like depending on like if your appearance is like completely something she's not interested in, like maybe, but in the vast majority of circumstances that's not the truth, because that makes no sense. Like, how many people have you met once and you're like, oh, okay, but then like you met them another time and you talk to them more and you learn more about them and they change their perception of you. So yeah, it's not a one or nothing thing. The way that the friend zone works is what happens is that guys kind of play that approach where they don't want to come off too strong. So they basically never indicate at all explicitly that they are interested in this woman romantically. They usually just talk, or they, like, are friendly, and that's fine, and that's a good way to establish a relationship. But eventually there comes a time when you have to establish like, hey, actually, you seem really cool. I'd like to see if this is something more, if we can actually have something more. The problem that a lot of guys have is that they do this way too late. Like a lot of guys who like say like, oh, I got friend zoned. They're like, okay, so wait, so how long did you wait until you asked her out? Like 3 months. And I'm like, what? What were you doing for 3 months that like you were hanging out with her and like you didn't ask her out like 3 months in, or like establish any romantic interest or like at all? Like, well, obviously that's why she friend zoned you, because maybe when for the first couple of weeks you were hanging out, she was like, oh, like, oh, maybe we're friends, or maybe something more is here. But then after you didn't make a move or establish any sort of romantic intent in those first few weeks or the next 2 months after that, the woman's like, oh, okay, he must not be interested. He's just a friend. Like, oh, okay, so I guess I'll just now establish this as a friend relationship. We are friends. And then 3 months later, the guy blindsides. They're like, hey, I've been like in love with you since day one. And she's like, what? Like, and that's usually
just like out of the blue.
Yeah, that's usually how friend zoning works, in the sense that it's not that the woman like put you in the friend zone the moment she met you. It was that there was a period of time where you probably had a shot, like, or she would, and that doesn't mean that she would have like been attracted to you, but like that she didn't just like completely call you out or like completely cross you out. But so many guys are so hesitant to make a move at all that eventually a certain time went by, and it's like, well, I mean, you'd think that like if we've been hanging out for a month and this dude hasn't like said anything or made a move or asked me out, like, okay, then that must be that this must just be a friend. He must not be interested. And then you kind of get comfortable with that. Like, you're like, okay, you accept it and whatever, you move on. And then, yeah, 2 months later, oh, I'm in love with you. Like, what? what are you talking about? No, why didn't you ask me out like a week in or something? Guys, this is what's so funny. Like guys are like, well, I don't want to move too fast. Like, dude, like 3 months is like, it's not too fast. Like, oh, or even like a week is not too fast. Or even like, okay, I've heard this a lot, and I've seen this a lot with dating apps and whatnot. If you're on a dating app like Tinder or Bumble, you are there to meet people. You are there to make a connection, right? That is the whole point of what OkCupid, all these dating apps are, right? And yet I will see people on Tinder or OkCupid or Bumble, and they're like, yeah, we've been talking for like a week, and I think it's time to ask her out. I'm like, what? Like, why a week? What? Like, what the fuck? Like, what have you been doing for a week? It's like, and again, the example that I used of my girlfriend may not be the best one because that was very quickly. It was like how our conversation went was, hey, what brings you to Bumble? It's like, bored. How about you? And I was like, oh, me too. Do you want to not get bored and grab a drink? So I think that's like a little bit fast. I was a little bold there, and it worked out, luckily. But when I say don't move too fast, what I mean is don't open the message with saying like, hey, wanna fuck? Like, hey, what's up, bitch? Like, you wanna like yeah, that's too fast. But if
Sure,
if
sure.
you've been chatting back and forth for like a day and seems to be going good, ask her out. You're on an app that the whole point is to put people in contact so they can go on dates. And going on that date like doesn't mean you're tied together for life. You're just going on a first date to see if you guys like each other. But you have to do that in person. You can do it through text, but like that doesn't usually work out as well. So yeah, don't it's when I so like yeah, when I say don't move too fast, that doesn't mean wait like a month. It means like don't
Sure.
like yeah, just try to like get to know a woman a little bit, and then if she seems engaging, maybe within like literally, if you match with someone like if within a day or two, if you don't really ask them out, it's like because imagine, especially from a woman's perspective, like imagine how many matches she's getting. Imagine how much conversations fizzle out. She's a lot of people are probably
Right.
having a lot of conversations. Hey, let's just go. Let's just meet up. Let's just see if there's something here. Why not? And yeah, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but
Oh no,
that's
no. I'm just happy to listen, and it's very well. I can actually personally relate to it's like, oh, why do guys kind of wait over a month or say like an extended period of time before they, ask is because I personally can relate this to a level because it's like for me it's like it's kind of hard to take that leap of faith a bit. And it's like it's kind of like that brief kind of vulnerability of saying like, hey, I really like you. Like, do you accept me to, go out and do something meaningful? And it's like, yes, no. And it's like and it's like and the no can be, feel devastating. But I'm kind of at that point now. I'm just like, oh, okay, it's whatever.
yeah, and the issue is that we also have to understand that like coming from a guy's perspective and coming from a woman's perspective also is that if you hear like a guy say like, oh, I was friend zoned, oh, I did all this and she friend zoned me, you have to take it with a grain of salt because you're you're only hearing one side of the equation. So for example, in the
Right.
case of like I was talking about in the video, women are like, oh, I gave him all these signs and he didn't see them. I'm like, okay, so what were the signs? Well, I said hi to him every morning, and I'm like, what? That's not a sign. What are you talking about? Like, you just said hi to him. That's not a sign. You may thought of it was a sign. You may thought what you were doing was clear, but like that's like it probably wasn't clear enough. And the same thing happens with guys. It's like, oh well, I mean, we went on a date. I'm like, did you establish it was a date? Did you make it clear that it was like? And again, you don't have to like say it's a date, but like there's a difference between saying like, hey, we could like go to the mall and just like hang out. It's like just as friends or like just chilling, like trying to like downplay it. Or
Yeah.
if you were asking someone out, like, hey, we should grab a drink sometime. You're really interesting. I'd like to get to know you better. It even if you're not explicitly stating it, you're kind of establishing. It's kind of clear. Like, okay, I'm asking you out as in more as just friends. Like another mistake a lot of guys make. Ugh. and women do this too, but I understand it why it's more common with women. But for men, hey, I'm going to a party. Do you want to come? Or hey, we're hanging out with friends. Do you want to come? This usually I don't think is a good idea to start, because if you're inviting, if let's say there's a girl and you're interested in maybe like dating her, getting to know her, when you try to invite her to something like a friend gathering or a gathering where multiple people are going, sometimes that doesn't really establish like sort of romantic intent. That's more friendly, right?
Right.
However, if you were to say like, "Hey, do you want to grab a drink, just me and you?" That's more, oh, okay, just me and you. This is more of a. It seems like you're establishing romantic intent here. And again, that can be very difficult. You don't want to come off as too strong, or too like intense. But it's about trying to find a good medium. You still need to establish it, but without coming off as like too much. However, to your question, a great way to break that ice is to just go right up and just get it out of the way and just say like, "Hey, I thought you were cute. I'd like to get to know you." So like you mentioning that she's cute, you've established that like, okay, you're interested in me more than just a friend. But what's great about it is like it's like pulling off a Band-Aid. It's like, oh, okay, it's over. I'm like, so, like you know that I'm interested in, or not like entirely. Like we could be friends, but like I am open to something more. And now we can have a conversation and just not have to deal with the question of like, oh, is he just want to be friends or does he want to date me? It's a good way to just kind of, ironically, if it sounds like something where like you need a lot of confidence to do, but actually I think it's good for nervous guys because it gets it out of the way quickly. Just do it. Just say, hey, you're cute. I wanted to talk to you. Boom, you're done. You never have to establish that you want to be more than friends again. You've done it. And if she accepts you, great. If not, whatever. But it's over. You've done it. You did it. Good.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, no, I just wanted to, this is kind of like off topic, but I just want to say I really appreciated the video because it's like, honestly, it's like your video kind of helped establish this like to not generalize women, but just kind of just see them as individuals with individual circumstances. It's like it's not like something I didn't know about, but it's more like, oh, okay, all right. You know what? That makes more sense. Kind of way. Like so now it doesn't like feel like, oh, rejection is this, it's attacking or not attacking, but it's more like, oh, my character is so flawed, I did something wrong. But it's more like it really depends on what that person is going through. And so I just want to say like I appreciated that.
Well, thank you, man. Yeah, it's generalizing is very difficult because there's a point where like you need to some extent you need to generalize when you're talking about men and women dating because there are certain universal characteristics that seem to be like, so for example, like on average, men are usually expected to make the first move, and that's something you kind of have to like establish. Like, hey, you can't just if you want to meet someone, if you're a guy, just going to a bar and just sitting there by yourself and just hoping a girl comes up to you. That's probably
It's
not
like
going
good
to
luck.
happen. Yeah, it's like, and again, I don't mean to say that that'll never happen. You might, but if I was going to make a generalization, that would be one that I'd be okay making. It's when you kind of get into generalizations about, or actually, I was going to say about like what women are attracted to, but even so, like there are certain things that I would say are universally attractive to not just women, but like for everyone. Like, hey, like women like confidence. Like, yeah, I think that's a safe
Yeah.
generalization. Now you have to go a step further and show that guy how to find his own brand of demonstrating confidence. You don't have to do it by like puffing your chest and like "what's up, bitch" and like being cocky. You can do it a number of ways. Like establishing confidence isn't like a one and done sort of thing. There are multiple ways to do it, through your passions, through friendliness, openness, opening conversations. A great thing that I always did on dates, and this is a great tip for a lot of guys. If you're on a date and you're nervous, chat up with the bartender before your date gets there. It's a great way to not only kind of warm up for the conversation, but it's kind of cool because there have been times when my date will show up and the bartender comes over and like we chat, and it just kind of makes you like, oh, this you like, you're friendly, you're kind of personable, like the bartender likes you, you're kind of cool, like that's cool. There are different ways to demonstrate that you're confident and self-assured without doing the basic, like, alpha male established dominance, like, like AMOG or whatever, like we were talking about earlier. Like dom her and like and shit like that, stupid crap like that. That usually
Sure.
comes off as very try hard. It's about finding your own brand of confidence and finding out how to demonstrate that. It's when you get to the point of like, hey, all women like it when guys don't give them respect or don't compliment them, and it's like, okay, see, now we're getting into a weird area that's gonna lead to some toxic. Like, there are, like, yeah, women, if you're just like kissing a woman's ass, it's going to come off as very needy or very manipulative, because she's just gonna be like, oh, okay, this dude just wants to fuck me. But that doesn't mean you can't never give someone a compliment. That's ridiculous. Like, imagine that. Like, how do you establish a relationship with someone if you like never say anything nice about them? That's like psychotic. Like, holy hell.
Yeah, that's a good point. Or maybe just like people just kind of like that. I know.
Or here's another good example. Men out there, are there women who, and like that goes back to the whole like women like assholes thing. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. I'm not gonna go into it, but are there women out there who love being treated like crap, who respond positively when like you call them whores and like treat them terribly or cheat on them and do stuff like that? Absolutely, there are. Stay away from those women. Like, do not. That is not good. It's so amazing. Like when like I hear like dudes say that, it's like, well, girls love it. Like when you treat them like garbage and like, and cheat on them and like give them no respect. It's like, are there women like that? Absolutely. A very
Really?
small minority. But are there women like
People
that?
have actually
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to interrupt. People actually gave advice of just being like, "Oh yeah, just treat her like crap. It'll work."
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, look at that Matt Cross idiot from my video. If you want to attract beautiful women, exploit flaws in her beauty, or like don't. Or I think another one of his videos was, women won't respect you if you respect them, or like something like insane, like that's how like insane a lot of like red pill rhetoric gets, where it's just like, what the fuck. and
Yeah,
again,
no kidding.
it's good advice that's like taken to the extreme of like, just kissing a girl's ass isn't like, that can be very, that because it kind of shows that you're just trying to get with her. You don't actually care. You're not like, your compliments aren't genuine. You're just trying to like get her back home in bed with you. But the extreme of that is just being like extremely combative and antagonistic towards her is like, no, that's not good at all. However, are there some women who respond positively to that? Yes. They are usually women who have extremely low self-confidence, and they are not someone who you probably will have a healthy relationship with. So, okay, yeah. So that's it. I mean, if you want that, okay, but good luck. Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that's like all the questions that I really have, my dude. It was a treat talking with you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent with the friend zone thing, but that
Oh
was
no, no. Like
that.
I personally like it. It's just like hearing just from like different experiences and just talking with people through it. It's like I absolutely love listening to people go on tangents because I feel like when people do that, you kind of just get a feel that that's kind of like where they're kind of passionate about or something that's where they're knowledgeable about it and they just want to just kind of talk in that field. And so for me, it's like I love to listen to people quote unquote talk in tangents.
Oh well, thank you, man. But yeah, it's just that like I've heard that a lot, the friend zone argument, and I don't think it's like doesn't exist. I actually think it is a problem, but the cause of it is actually a lot more nuanced. Like guys just think it's like, oh, I got friend zoned because I wasn't Chad Thundercock. It's like no, it's probably because you kind of misread. You kind of you you were good in the fact that like you didn't like, hey bitch, you want to fuck? Like that's not good. But at the same time, you didn't establish romantic interest soon enough, and that sort of led to her like, oh, okay, he must not be interested. And then you sprung it on her like a month later, and she's like, what the fuck? That's usually the issue. And finding that balance is hard. Um, but yeah, it's something I think needs to be cleared up. And to your point about like that generalization, because I saw people talking about it in chat, this is another generalization that needs to die. Women, if you are ever insecure because you like a guy and you really want to ask him out, but you were afraid that he is going to feel emasculated if you make the first move, one, most men do not ever think like that. Most men, if a woman ever came up to them and like showed interest in them, they would like go home and like pray to whatever god they follow and be like, holy fucking shit, yes. Like most guys would be flattered, they would love it, and they would like be very open to it, and you could have a wonderful relationship. Are there men who would feel emasculated if a woman showed interest in them or made the first move? Yes, there are. And those men are little boys, and you do not want to date them ever. If you ever like, if a woman like, I'm just think about that. Like a woman says like, "Hey, you seem nice. I'd love to, take you out." And if a guy felt threatened by that or emasculated, like, what does that tell you about how secure he is in terms of his own masculinity? Like, it's just not something that take that as a sign that like, oh, okay, this is not someone I want to date ever. But yeah, again, sorry, I went on. Again, I know I went on a little tangent there, but I'm glad that you didn't mind it. But
Yeah, no, I mean, to make the comment of like what you said and stuff like that, like, I mean, I would certainly appreciate it if just like women just approached me and just like, told me like, hey, I'm interested in you. Do you want to go out and stuff like that? Yeah, I would be like ecstatic. It was
yeah,
like, oh, wow. All right.
it's
All right.
it's sort of like the red pill for women. It's like a very stupid misconception that a lot of women have about men, um, due to the fact that there's a small minority of like stupid dudes out there who ruin it for everyone else because like, oh, she made the first move. That's not okay. I'm supposed to be the man. I'm like, fuck off, dude. Like no one cares what you think. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like that's such a
I
stupid.
guess,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, it's just like, I just want to just try to just be honest. And it's like, if people like that, great. If not, then it's like, okay, that's fine too. So, but I don't like the idea of just kind of, you know, using manipulation to get a certain way, because
Exactly.
it's just, it's just disingenuous. And it's like, is this kind of like the foundation you want to build off of a relationship or even something of a relationship that could last a while?
It's
That's kind of like how I want to try to approach it.
it's very difficult because if you're trying to give a guy advice to like say like he's very has low self-confidence and you're trying to give him tips on how to like be more confident on a date or put his best foot forward, where is the line between sort of like faking it until you make it, and like manipulation or like underhandedness, and sometimes that can be very muddy. Um, and that's sort of like where a lot of pickup artist stuff goes wrong, where it's like there is some ways where it's like, hey, you know, if you're really anxious, here are some tips where you can sort of like quell your own anxiousness to like come off as more confident. But what if you know, like obviously like straight up like lying to a woman about like your job or stuff like that, that's not good. um or how, but then like you get into negging. Are you trying to like elicit a response from her? And it's like I think negging is a good sort of like um I think negging is a good um benchmark for it, because negging is like right where it becomes, it could be playful teasing, or it could be sort of like a coercive attempt, and it's a very fine line, and it really has to do with intent. So it's very difficult to it's very difficult to um on a non case by case basis make a call, and so that's what is very difficult.
I agree with that
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. Well, listen, I'm gonna bounce off and let somebody else on the call. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for the time.
Alrighty, well, see you, y'all. Take care.
All right, take care, man. Thanks so much. All right. Are we okay with the video audio? I think some guys were saying there was like a unsync or something. Sorry, it might be my internet or something. Okay. So we are going to. I'm gonna have time for one more call. Ass Rammer, I think that's you. Let me see if you're on. Ass Rammer 69. We're ending with the best. I know there are a bunch of you guys, many people who mentioned wanting to, who wanted to get on. So sorry about that. But I mean, this has been awesome. This went so fucking awesome. I was a little afraid because, like, you know, having people on, I didn't know if there were going to be some like certain people. I'm like, but this was fantastic. This went so well. So I think this should become a regular thing. And so so the people who message me, make sure by tonight just message me again saying like, hey, I was in the queue, or I messaged you during the stream. Just message me, and I will make sure that you are first in line for the next time we do this. But thank you. Okay, so last call. I'm gonna give you a call right now, ass. I don't know if you want me to like refer to you as Ass Rammer. I'm sorry if but do you hear me? Are you on?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, I'm good.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't know if that's like how you wanted me to like refer to you. So
Oh, yeah. You can just call me JC. That's good.
JC, that's better.
Yeah, no problem, man. But hey, I watched it a couple days ago. I really enjoyed your video. I think, like I've just never related to somebody else's kind of dating struggles as much as what you put forward there. And the part that really got to me, and kind of part of the question that I wanted to ask, is when you talked about how you kind of lost yourself in Tinder, where it became less about meeting people and just more of a game with like you become more validated by the number of people that you can hook up with. Like I kind of hit that struggle a couple years back. I just turned 23 and I've been living in my house for a year because of quarantine. But I just hit this stretch earlier in college where just I had gotten rejected a lot in high school, just rejection after rejection. And in college, I just finally decided to get on Tinder, and I felt, or I, sorry, I'm having a hard time putting this into words, but
take your time, man.
oh, thanks. basically, like after one rejection in college, and as the guy was saying earlier, I kind of put myself into a friend zoning situation where it was pretty much all on me. I met this girl who also had a boyfriend, and I was like, I'll just wait around and she'll see who's really got it all. And I was her friend for
Oh,
like
I've
five
I've done that
months.
before. I've done that before, my friend. Oh, jeez.
Uh,
Looking back, I'm like,
and
what was I thinking?
it really, I've, and we went on a bunch of like friend dates. Like I never implied that it was like a date, but she definitely knew, and I just wasn't assertive enough to ask her out right then and there. And so we're at the end of freshman college year, and I finally do ask her out, and she kind of just put me down right then and there, and it stung a lot. But at that point, I just decided, because I didn't want to do Tinder or online dating or anything, because I always just thought I was really idealistic about I'd meet the my perfect girlfriend in real life, and everything will be great, and there will be birds singing in the trees, and it'll be just like a Hollywood movie. But that illusion was kind of broken for me right then and there, and I went on Tinder, and the same night, I ended up losing my virginity to a woman that I wasn't really attracted to, and just kind of that whole illusion of perfect romance, and that was kind of broken for me. And from then on out, I really hit a low point where I just would hook up with as many women as I could, even if I wasn't really attracted to them. And like a lot of people might tell you that if you're scoring with a lot of ladies, that you're some kind of Chad. But in all honesty, my self-esteem was just at rock bottom, and that went on for like 2 years. And uh, I'm 23 now, and I've never had a girlfriend. And at this point, I feel like I have a pretty high body count, like it's north of 50, and I honestly, I don't feel like I deserve a girlfriend. Like I'm afraid to, like if I have to, I I guess what I'm saying is I don't know how to like transition from being a himbo to like being a good boyfriend, because I don't feel like at this point that I can.
Well, what makes you feel as though you're not deserving of a relationship?
Well, I think that just that like there were many times where like I could have had like a girl really liked me, and she wanted to be in a relationship with me, but I just ended up pushing her away because like to me I just like my self-esteem was so low that I thought that the possibility that I could actually have a sustained relationship with this woman who's so cool, like she's just too good for me, and I thought that it wouldn't work. And that happened multiple times, and looking back on it now, it really does hurt to think of what could have been. Like I'll beat myself up about it, but like I'm optimistic that I can get out of this. But I just like I can't tell any of my friends that like how promiscuous I was. And another thing that I've never told anybody, and I don't think I ever could tell anybody about this in real life, is that I also got with a number of prostitutes in between, just over the years in between there. And like, I don't know, I just kind of wanted that rush. I got a sex addiction, but I ended up just being lonelier and lower even after that. And I just, I feel like I'm just locked into this rut where I can't break out. Like the idea of breaking out of this rut just seems impossible to me.
It's it's funny because like you made a great point, and that's sort of how a lot of people. I even got comments on it in the video. They'll look at you and me, and they'll say, or they'll look at you and say like, "Bro, you've you've laid 50 girls? How, like, what, like, that's awesome. And you're like, I'm like I'm the most depressed I've ever been in my life. And
Yeah.
it's hard because when you're not in that, when you're sort of like at the front end, where like you're someone who's
Mhm.
like really obsessing over like getting laid or stuff like that, it's hard to like understand that because it doesn't compute almost.
Mhm.
Like, what? How are you upset? Like, why isn't that good? Because, and again, it's hard because I hate this. I think that um, there is a certain, not to the extent of like where you and I have gone down. I think you and I went past the point completely, but
Yeah.
there is a certain point where like you're gonna find that out. Like, you know, most people like you hook up here and there, and then you kind of realize, this isn't that fun. I mean, it's okay, but like, you know, then you
Mhm.
actually meet someone you click with, and then it's so much more fulfilling. And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, this is cool. It doesn't mean you have to like get married right away. Doesn't mean you have to like make it official, but like, um, there's something more fulfilling that you're after.
Mhm.
However, it sounds like you kind of fell into the same trap that I did, where it just sort of it got away from you a bit.
Mhm.
However, you're in a much better place than me. It sounds like at only 23, you're um, very aware of it, which is fantastic. You're kind of in a space where, like, I didn't really like come to grips and realize what was happening until way farther down the line, and then I I was kind of in your place where I didn't know how to get out of it, so I just kept doing it until I
Mhm.
hit rock bottom, and then I had no choice but to crawl, like find a way out. Um, but yeah, I mean, to your point, I don't. So when you mention that you don't think you deserve, um, like a relationship or some fulfillment, do you think that's because do you feel that you're sort of like, what's what I'm looking for? You're sort of ashamed of your like your sleeping around or like what you've done until this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Because like I think because I started this whole thing thinking that it's just like the movies, and that if you really like a person, then they'll like you back because you're putting your best foot forward. But I think it's just like I hit this point where I saw how far I had fallen from that to the point where I was just fulfilling my most like base sexual desires, and I felt horrible about it because there's no human connection or whatever. Like it's just endorphins and dopamine. But I realized that like I just treated it like a game, and I was becoming somebody that I really didn't like, just swiping through people on Tinder and just trying to hook up as much as I possibly could, as like that was a way to validate myself and to be like a haha, look at me now, I showed you. And it's yeah,
And
I just hit
and then
I'm
you
kind of
realize that no, you're like the only person you're trying to prove anything to is yourself, and
yeah.
you'll never satisfy yourself, so you just keep going, and then you're
Exactly.
stuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't think. I mean, like, just to put in perspective, you didn't do anything wrong. You know, you just
Hmm.
you. I mean, like it's. I know it. Like looking back, I'm the same way. That I'm kind of like, ugh, like I'm like pissed off that I wasn't able to sort of like realize what I know now earlier. And it's
Hmm.
frustrating. And like I even mentioned in the video, like there are many women who I met during that time who I could have had great relationships with, but
Hmm.
I fucked them up.
Yeah, exactly, man. There were times when I could have had a relationship, but either I just kind of pushed for sex too early, and when you have sex on the second date, then that I don't know, you really can't. And I can't speak for everybody, but it's just too soon, and you ruin things in the long term by not really getting to know somebody like that, and then you just end up not talking to each other ever again. And you do that a couple times, and you realize that your whole perspective is wrong, and that's why this is happening, and that you just need to reevaluate just why you're doing this in the first place and how you can make it better.
and to your point, it's sort of kind of going back to the little friend zone thing. Sometimes establishing um like just a straight up sexual relationship too early can actually screw things up, because it kind of, oh, so this is going to be sort of like a hookup, like friend of benefits thing. It's not going to be romantic.
Mhm.
It sometimes can actually have the opposite effect. Even if it's a girl, you actually end up like, oh, this chick's badass. I actually want to like date you. But you
Mhm.
both have kind of like internalized it as like, no, this is just sex. So we can't do that, even though it's like, why?
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think, well, I think what I would suggest is, I mean, like, obviously that is something that you have to, in terms of your own self doubt, in terms of you being a good or being deserving of a relationship, obviously that is something that you have to sort of, like, we can all tell you here in the chat, I can tell you that of course you are, man. Like, of course you are. No one's, you're not undeserving of that. Never think that at all. But of course, this is something that you have to, sort of like, and you'll work through it. It'll come. Like, I'm the same way. I still struggle with it sometimes a lot. Like, I look at my girlfriend now, I'm like, holy shit, like, what the hell did I do to deserve this? This is like
Mhm.
way more than I deserve. Um, and it will be hard, but I think to kind of go back to, what I've spoken about,
Mhm.
even in, like, I think even in the community post I put the other day, I think being open about this to a potential partner is, obviously you don't have to like go into specifics.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, like, that's for you, and that's when, that's for at your discretion. It's not really
Mhm.
necessary, I don't think. But I think, if you meet a woman and you're open, you say, like, um, I've been through this. I've had trouble sort of, you know, in terms of like
Mhm.
more commitment, but it's, I think, one, not only does that, and again, like, red pill dudes will tell you, don't be weak, don't be vulnerable, like that, like, fuck that shit, fuck that bullshit.
Mhm.
Not only does it show that you are, and at 23 especially, like, holy hell, like, you're way more mature than I was at 23. um, Way more, probably more mature than me than I am now, to be honest. Um, it shows an incredible amount of self-reflection, in the sense that you are now in a place where you're not in the best place. You're not like good to go. You still have issues you're gonna work out, but you're in a place where you know what the right path is. You're no longer on the wrong path, and that's
Mhm.
fantastic. That's good, because that's where, unfortunately, that's where like a lot of guys get stuck for decades if they ever get out of it. Um,
Mhm.
and it shows a tremendous amount of self-reflection, in the sense that you were able to recognize that, and that, like, I recognize that was not for me, that I made mistakes, but I want to work on this now. And two, I think to a woman who you may be interested romantically, I think telling her that is it would be very flattering, in a sense, in the sense of, I'm not just looking for, just like, to get you in bed. I'm not just looking for something physical. I've gone that road and it was not fulfilling. So if I'm here with you now, it's because you are fulfilling that for me. You are someone who I enjoy talking to, who makes me feel safe and comforted. Um, I think that, I mean, I guess I can't speak for one, but I think if someone were to tell me that, that would be, I would be incredible. I'd be so flattered to be like, well, thank you. I'm so glad that I can be that for you, and that you were there for that person for the right reasons. You're not
Mhm.
just feigning it to get them in bed or get something from them. You're doing it because I'm here, because I want to be here. Um,
Mm.
so with that said, man, yeah, even with those two, I mean, even alone, I don't think that you are undeserving. But in addition to those, in addition to the fact that you both have a tremendous amount of self-awareness, and that you're working to improve your relationships and how healthy they are, I think that makes you even more deserving, than even more so, because you're someone who knows what, um knows what the other path, where that leads. You know how relationships can become toxic. You can recognize these toxic behaviors, and thus you can bring that into a relationship, and it will, and that self-reflection and that self-awareness will improve your relationship and your closeness to one another and your honesty with one another tenfold. For example, me and my girlfriend, we always joke, our talks are like our relationship talks where we like kind of discuss our feelings about like what's going on. We probably do more of that in like an hour than some couples have done in like a 10-year marriage. And that sounds like horrible to say, and that sounds so sad to say, but it's the truth. There are so many people out there couples who never open up and are never vulnerable until 20 years down the line when everything comes crashing down. But it seems like you are in a place where you're ready to find someone who you can be open and honest with. And I think just with that mindset, once you find someone who is willing to go on that with you, you're going to have a fucking awesome relationship.
Thanks, man. I guess my one last little question is on that. What was it in your personal experience? How did you end up telling your girlfriend about like your past promiscuity? Like, how did you break it to her, I guess?
I'm trying to think, I think we had spoken about it, and I think we were kind of like, it started off as like that, like, like after like, I think like a month or two of dating, we kind of had that like jokingly. So like, ooh, so what's your body count? Not like probing, but just more of like a jokey thing. And she told me hers and I told her mine, and she was like, damn, like, yeah. But like, I think, but she didn't realize like all that was packed into it. I was like, she was kind of like, oh wow, and I was like, yeah, like, oh geez, like fuck, like I was like not really as happy about it as maybe other people think I should be. But then later down the line, I think it came out slowly in the sense of when we started to run into relationship issues, and I don't mean that in a negative way. If you're in a relationship, you will have issues. Relationship issues is not a negative. It's a thing that every relationship has. Some are bigger, some are smaller. But if you're in a relationship and you never have issues or disagreements or fights, that's probably not a good sign. It probably means you're, never say never, but in my experience, especially if you've been together for like over a year, you're probably maybe not addressing certain things that maybe you should address. And just little by little, I kind of opened up and felt more comfortable. It's like, yeah, it's sort of hard for me to open up in a sense or be vulnerable just because, this was my past, and, I kind of got into this rut where I felt like I needed to be validated. So to have someone here who is there for me every day and is like my rock there for me every day, sometimes it's hard for me to accept that in a way, like kind of like in the same way you say it. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm not deserving. And I think it just takes time. It's not really a timetable. There's not really a way to do it. I think it's just really whenever you feel comfortable, whenever you say, this is something I'm ready to discuss. And again, mine kind of came out when we started to have, we ran into some issues, and I kind of like, hey, so this is sort of what's going on in my head. This is sort of why, not to excuse, but to sort of explain, my behavior. And that's how it came about. But yeah, I think that's really I hate to not give you like any like solid game plan, but like, I think that's really something that you'll find out as you go along. When you meet someone and you're getting close and you feel like you're able to open up and trust, you'll just know when the right time is. If you and again, you don't have to divulge all the details,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
just to kind of give some some background, you know. If I'm someone, if I ever seem distant, if I ever seem cold, know that it's not you. Know that it's not because I don't appreciate you being here. It's because what I've gone through. Sometimes it's hard for me to open up. And
Okay.
again, I think that whoever you end up whoever you end up being with, I think they will greatly appreciate you being able to open up to them. Again, I hate when people think it's like a sign of weakness, but it's like, consider how that feels to someone, that you were someone that you trust them enough to share with them something like that. I think that only makes a relationship stronger, in my experience. But
Wow. Thanks, man. This really, thank you for listening to that and giving me that advice, because yeah, that's really what I've been needing to hear. Because I mean, all of my friends in real life are either asexual or they've been married for 5 years to their high school sweethearts, and they don't really they're not really thinking actively about relationships in that kind of sense of like not being in one or wanting to be in one. And this, like, all of your advice and throughout the entire stream too, and anybody else who spoke earlier who's still here, I really appreciate all of your help and questions and perspectives too. It's been really helpful, and I don't want to take any more of your time, but thanks for talking, man. That was really helpful.
absolutely, man. And I have to say, as like Genevieve in the chat said, I did not expect this conversation to be that lovely, considering your name is AssRammer69.
Fair enough, man. Yeah, I've had it for years, so I can't change it at this point. It's who I am. But
And now it works. You're gonna like.
Yeah.
I can't wait for people to be like in the chat, like, man, that conversation with AssRammer was so lovely and like open and everyone's like, I'm sorry, what did you say?
All right, man. Hey, have a good night, man. Everyone in the stream, have a good night too.
Thank you too, man, and good luck. You're gonna do awesome. You were in a much better place than I was. You're gonna do awesome.
All right, man. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, man. Good night. That was awesome. All right, I have to go. My girlfriend's probably like waiting behind the door because I think I said I was gonna be like done like around 8 or 8:30. I didn't expect this went fucking fantastic. Like, I did not expect this to go this well. This was incredible. And the fact that so many people, it seems like, really like are now sort of open to sharing. That's incredible. This is fantastic. So I've got to run, but absolutely we're gonna do this again. I don't know if we're gonna do it next week. But I want to do it as soon as possible because this was fucking fantastic. Like, holy shit, this went so goddamn well. Like, all those conversations were fantastic, nuanced, wholesome. I think there was so much good information. Like, I was like, that was 10 times better than I thought that it would ever be. So, like, holy shit, yes, we're doing this again. Yeah. Thank you guys. Like, holy hell. Everyone in the comments, everyone who spoke, thank you guys so much for opening up, for being here. And I guarantee everyone who spoke tonight that I've spoken to, I think you've reached a lot of people, and I think you're going to help people. Oh, wait, did the stream end? The stream didn't end. Can you guys still see me or hear me? Wait, can you guys still see me? Am I still live? No? Yep. Oh, okay. Sorry, there's an error occurred message on my fucking YouTube studio shit. So, okay. What the fuck, YouTube? You scared the shit out of me. I thought I was like talking like dead air for like the last hour. I was like, oh shit. Okay. That was weird. I don't know why that's weird. The playback in the studio isn't working. I don't know why. But okay, I gotta go. Guys, we're gonna do this again. If you on the next one, again, anyone who has messaged me, I will sort of document them tomorrow, and you guys will be first in line for next time. But then anyone else who wants to chat, again, we'll do more. We'll still do more than I think I want to do several of these. This is awesome. Just let me know, and I'll schedule times for us to talk. If you want to, I have my Patreon up. If you guys want to donate to the channel that way, I also added Coffee and Venmo, I think, to my channel in the description. So if you just want to do a one-time donation, that's fine too, because I know some people don't want to do a month thing. Otherwise, if you want to help the channel, I think the views actually on the male dating and sex video are doing pretty well, but share as much as you can. My sister and girlfriend told me I have to be better at self-promotion. So share the video as much as you can, do your best. And I appreciate you guys being here. Everyone who spoke, thank you. We'll definitely do this again sometime soon. Thank you guys so much. This was fantastic. All right. Thank you guys. Good night, and I'll see you next time.